It didn't go out there. Someone just put it in a bin somewhere and then decided to post it on the internet for, ask and giggles later. I don't know. I'm self censoring. We can curse on here. Yeah, we're good. But anyway, uh, yeah, it was like Inside Edition was a show he did back in the 90s or early 2000s, and then back before he pivoted to a conservative pundit, and or ardent conservative pundit, and then he was, a bit of a prima donna behind the scenes, probably, as a lot of those people probably are, to be honest. Male and female, old and young,
Oh
black
yeah,
and white, blah blah blah.
100%.
Any presenters probably, got some behind the scenes stuff that they wouldn't want shared. And so someone decided to share. They posted it to YouTube or some other file sharing site, maybe like 5, 10 years later when those started to become a thing. And it was like one of the first memeable videos of those kind. And it was like "Do it live" because that was one of the key like sort of say words or catchphrases from the things. Like he was freaking out about the teleprompter not being to his liking, and so he's like, "All right, screw it, we'll do it live. I'll write it," meaning he'll improvise his own dialogue, which is or his own verbiage because it's what teleprompters for, and we'll do it live. Anyway, are you still getting things set up?
Well, I started recording right now, and it's funny. Like halfway between in the middle of that conversation, I started recording. Then I started kind of laughing about it, thinking like, "Oh, this is kind of like the Joe Rogan experience, where you just got dropped into the middle of." But I'm
In
not going live, but I
media,
am going to be recording it from here on.
yeah, in media res. Okay, and so like for as far as timers go, does the hour start now, basically?
Yeah. Well, hold on. Let me play the intro real quick.
Go ahead.
So, welcome back to the Creator Economy podcast. That'll work, I suppose. And then let me while we're
Oh,
at
did you
it.
hear that?
Oh
Did you
no
hear
no
that
no!
napkin?
I
Okay.
did, but like I was already done with everything before that. It doesn't make a difference. And
Okay. We're
now,
so professional, Brian.
well, now that I know that I'm recording it and not doing it live, I'm a lot more relaxed because I know I can fix a lot of shit later on. It's a whole other world once I
Okay.
realize that I'm fucking.
I said we, by the way, not you. We're so professional.
Oh, I know. All right. So let me get this. I've got two computers up too, as a matter of fact, just to make everything extra. That does. Funny enough, that whole story does kind of fit in with the creator economy, anyways, because Bill O'Reilly. I've told people this a lot. It's not even just an attack on Bill O'Reilly, an attack on journalists in general. But like, journalism is no different than a content creator. Like the problems that like the high end journalist like Bill O'Reilly has to go through is no different than the problems that like Taylor Swift has to go through. Essentially, like they both are in the same game. It's just one's content is a little different than the other. I was gonna say one's based on news, but I chose Bill O'Reilly as the person. He does a fact based editorial kind of thing. But
It
and
is
it
based on news, but it is not necessarily news in itself.
and it's funny. And as I was thinking about that, I was like, I wonder how much of Taylor Swift's catalog is about news, but like it's mostly about her like news about her breakups than anything else.
Well, actually, that one, if I can, I do to just nod to the Swifties out there. TS, I guess, Army or whatever. I think it's an Army these days. Maybe it's an Air Force, but
And
they
Navy.
would say that she has no. The Navy is Rihanna. Um, even I know that. Uh, she has moved past that. That is like the meme of her like Ovia, her catalog or her her style, but she has moved past, perhaps long moved past talking about her breakups as her like thing du jour. I would say if anything it's like more talking about her persona and her life, and maybe her beefs would be more of like what she's mining for content these days. But anyway.
That's good at least. It's mining her. She's basically a female soft pop Eminem, I suppose. I haven't. I, I
I don't know who would be more offended by that comparison.
both of them probably at this point, but it doesn't matter. So did I ever tell you at the time I actually pissed off Eminem and made it into one of his one of his rap lyrics? They didn't mention me by name, but I can very clearly draw the timeline as to how it occurred.
Sure.
But long story short, it was Twitter. First off, Twitter is the source of
Mhm.
all evils, and I
Well, for you in particular, you've been a bad boy. You were a bad boy back
it's
then.
not just
But
for
anyway,
me, to be fair. How I was
and
introduced to
not just
Twitter
for
was
me,
not
not just for me, but
yeah.
yes, for you. But yeah.
But I had gotten into and I was smoking weed, and then I got into a debate with a journalist for Hip Hop DX, I believe it was, or
Hmm.
allhiphop.com. I can't remember which one of them, on Twitter, about how I believed that I still that Lil Wayne is a better rapper than Eminem, is a better artist. I think is what I was initially saying, and
Okay.
so when I was going through this debate after about after about an hour of him just kind of being condescending, I challenged him to a or a blog battle, and
Okay.
yeah,
A blog
a
battle with
blog
the
battle
Hip Hop DX journalist.
because he had his
Okay.
or all hip hop. I can't remember which one. To be fair,
Okay.
I think it was Hip Hop DX, but either way, he at the time I was writing for HuffPost. I had free access to write whatever the hell I wanted on HuffPost, and
Hmm.
so I wrote an article called "Sorry Slim, but Lil Wayne is the greatest rapper alive," and this ended up getting. I woke up the next morning because I sent it to him on Twitter, and I guess a bunch of people were watching us arguing on Twitter, and then like all this stuff started occurring. So by the time the HuffPost woke up, they're all on the East Coast that do most of that stuff at the time, in New York, and by the time they woke up, like 3 hours after that, this story had come out of nowhere and was getting traffic, so they just put it on their front page because whoever whatever millennial like 20-year-old at the time, this was a decade ago, had looked at this, decided, oh, this is kind of a good article, and I mean, just put it on there, and it just kept getting more and more attention. And
Hmm.
so this was during a time where he was, I can't remember what albums he was between, but the song that he had released, the next song that he had released after that was with Busta Rhymes called Calm Down. I don't know if you're familiar with it.
I am not.
So do you know the song House of Pain by Jump Around by House of Pain? Sorry.
I was going to say, I think you got those transposed, but yes, I definitely do know Jump Around it.
So it uses that beat, like a remix of it, and
Hmm.
it's Busta Rhymes and Eminem rapping over. Hold on, I'm pulling up the lyrics. Calm down lyrics, Busta, Eminem. So what had happened was when I the HuffPost had made this go essentially viral. So like if you look up like Brian Penny, Eminem, Lil Wayne, you'll find on like rap lyrics and some of those A to Z lyrics. I can't remember some of the different lyric sites and a couple of the hip hop blogs, and forums and things. They talk about this HuffPost article, and like basically saying that I'm fucking insane for doing any of this, and
Uh-huh.
it's very clear that this has gotten to like when you talk about, we were kind of saying this before I started recording, the fragility of ego will say that the more like famous the person is, kind of the more fragile that ego tends to be. It's like a lot of these people are very easy to reach if you really know how to do it. And how I did it with Eminem, he's always had a thing with journalists, and by writing this thing in HuffPost of all places, to get criticized in HuffPost as a rapper for him was pretty much like being compared to Taylor Swift. And it was kind of the same thing that I had done too, because I compared, instead of comparing their stuff to the rap community. I mean, I understand hip hop, but I instead took it across the greater like rock and roll, basically pop music, all like compared it to like all time greats of everything, and compared them to like the Beatles and Grateful Dead, all this kind of stuff. And
Hmm.
hold on, let me pull up the lyric
So
that.
is this what the podcast is going to be like? Like a series of, I mean, I guess it is what it is. That's what podcasts are, a series of digressions. I'm being very meta here by like just deconstructing, but the two things that I see when I first, I mean, it's 'cause I'm just not a big, uh, hip hop or Eminem fan, but uh, two things I see when I do just a basic Google search of Brian Penny Eminem. Uh, there's a Pinterest. There's
You're
a
looking for the
Pinterest.
article.
Well, the article has a 410 not found, so I'm just gonna let you know that
Well,
right
look up Huff Post Eminem, Little Wayne,
now. No,
maybe.
no, I'm telling you. So here's the thing. Okay, one of the first things, the second thing that I found from the Google search, it's a Kanye to the .com message board. Okay, and it's posted. This is like page one of a thread. Eminem got buried on his own album. Dash Huffington Post review. Okay, so I'm pretty sure that this is you.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's http slash Fef post blah blah slash Brian Penny slash Kendrick Lamar dash Barry dash Eminem blah blah blah. You click that link and it says uh 410. This content has been removed. So sorry, man.
I got erased.
Yeah, you got erased from the internet. But it's here for all time on on the
But you
Kanye
could tell
to
that it existed.
message boards. No, yeah, of course.
So
And
here,
shout out to Amand, who apparently is banned. But posted this back in 2013.
yeah,
Yeah, the internet is undefeated, even
I know.
in spite of itself.
Yeah, it's in
But
the archives.
Eminem's yeah, but Eminem's, but he basically like copies and pastes, I think, your whole article verbatim. And it ends with, Brian Penny is a former business analyst at Bank of America, turned whistleblower, writer, and consultant. And there's like, what do they rate it? They called Relapse his worst album ever. Most reviewers agree. I'm sure it's his lowest rated album, blah, blah, blah. So that's kind of where that's at. It's like using a form as the way back, which I have
I
seen
love
it
it.
before. A lot of
You know, it
forums
does.
trying to
Yeah, Reddit's been good. That's why Reddit I always kind of loved because I would come back to it for that sometimes.
Reddit though, because it's so like a decade plus from this, for example. Most of the time they just post the link. Sometimes, like oftentimes, there'll be commentary on what they're posting in the OP, but they're not like posting the OP verbatim.
Fair.
They might make references to certain lines, quotations, whatnot. But it's rare to get it like verbatim in the actual thread. Whereas I think at that particular point on the internet, and maybe this is more exceptional than I'm making it out to be. Like it's not as common for them to post articles verbatim in the thread when they're linking
So
it. But I feel like that was more common back in the day than it is now.
one of those lyric sites also did the same thing. And you know how they break down the lyrics? The one that like you highlighted and it'll tell you what the lyrics means or the history of the lyrics. They put that
Mhm.
article, they copied and pasted that article into it, and that's how because I pissed the guy off who does that, and so he did that to my article, and he was like arguing, then debating the article and like highlighting different things the entire way down, basically, just like that forum, essentially.
Yeah.
But it was like an interactive version of it. So here,
So do you? Sorry, go ahead.
here, I just want to read you the lyric that came after it. This is the next lyric that Eminem wrote after that, after all that, after the
He sneak
forums.
dissed me.
Me and Bus put it down like a sick pet. You're fucking with vets, dog. Fucking internet bloggers. I sit on my front of my computer all day and comment on everything. I'm an expert on everything. Everything sucks. Play the next song. Guess if I hopped out your freaking laptop, you idiot prick, with Biggie and kicked the living shit out of you, I'd be dead wrong. That was the lyric that I had inspired from Eminem.
Right. I don't know if you still have or run the Clubhouse Convos account on Pinterest. I can see, your cat avatar there. So I think that's you. It
Yeah,
says,
most likely.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah. No,
1K
it is me. I
followers.
do still have it.
What it's like being dissed. He dissed me once, and he did it
Oh,
subliminally.
yeah.
So
That
I
was
don't get
that.
any of the fame like any of the fame someone like MGK gets. It's not so much that he sneak dissed me, which he claims not to do, as it is that I'm just nobody, some nobody. Eminem spits pure venom. Anyway,
Yeah, that's the blog I wrote last year, linking back to keep that thing alive, just to keep that little string in there, just to pull at
it
it one day.
says it says from 2019, at
Oh
least
yeah, I
according to
guess it wasn't
Google.
last year. It's been a
Yeah.
minute.
No big though.
No, oh, that's right.
Anywho.
That's what I did. I moved it last year. Never mind. It's because I've had to redo my. Well, it was 2 years ago now, but I redid after COVID. I split my blog into four so that like the business, the creator stuff, all that stuff was kind of like split up more.
Sure, sure.
So, yeah.
So how
I,
are we doing so far? You said we are live, so
oh yeah.
are we live
Well, we're
streaming?
not live. No, we're recording at this point. We've been
Okay,
recording
live to
this whole
tape.
part
Still
of
live
it.
to
So
tape.
yeah, yeah, basically, yeah. And so sorry. I just
It's okay.
was laughing. Like I hadn't thought about this in a minute. Trying to like break down the. This is why I have to document things like that to the internet because like if I have to try to remember the dates of when all this stuff happened, this was like 2013 and then 2019,
Mhm.
and to like try to explain this whole story, people are just like, whatever, dude. No, you didn't.
There's a term for it, I think it's like secondary brain or external brain. But yeah, I mean we all do to varying degrees, especially us as connected types, as internet types. I often tell people I'm not a techie, but I am online. I am overly online. We use various things. I use Twitter as like a journal, quasi, personal record of sorts. I use like behind the scenes. I use Evernote and the G Suite and all that fun stuff. Like if I had to keep all this stuff in my head, or God's forbid, I had to like write it all down into hard copies and I don't know, just files and folders. I mean, I wouldn't be able to carry it. It'd be like a million file cabinets deep at this point. But yeah, we all kind of use the internet in that way to varying
That's
degrees.
a good jumping off point to talk about the ethics and kind of lead into getting into AI because so
Right. We haven't talked about AI yet.
I don't know if you're aware of the most recent thing with Adobe where basically they they redid this is not the Adobe stock, this is Adobe as a whole.
Uh-huh.
Redid their AI policy within their uh, data policy for I believe it was the Creative Cloud as like in general and the way that it had read that got a lot of people upset was that it basically made it sound like they were going to start training based off of the data that you have, like that you're using within Photoshop. Because all of all the software is now cloud based, so you have to connect to their servers in order to use them. And so now, we've already got people that are mad about AI general scraping, generative AI, just scraping the public internet and just like we were talking about that internet archives and just the forums being like the ways of retaining data on the internet when you put it up there you kind of expect it to always be out there but like how do you expect it to be used and how much is it going to be used and Adobe swears that they're not using any training AI. Okay, let me be very specific about this. They swear that they're not
Allegedly.
training. Yeah, they're not training their data models, AI data models, on your Photoshop stuff. I believe is what they said, or in-app things. But it could be used on anything that you upload to the Creative Cloud, like through their cloud storage. There was some like two or three different apps. I'm not familiar with the full Creative Cloud there, but like that they were talking about whether or not that information basically is being scraped. And this, to kind of contrast it, Twitter, God mode, I'm sure you've heard about by this point, along with all of their other things that are going on there with their AI stuff at Twitter.
Hmm.
But for anyone listening, basically, God mode was one of the things that I thought was interesting, where essentially any employee could turn on God mode. Well, any employee knew how could turn on God mode and
Yeah, I
then
wouldn't
tweet
say
as
any
anybody.
employee, but let's to be sorry to cut you, but to be clear on context,
Developers.
God mode is a common term in coding in general, in software in general. There's God mode for video games, there's God mode for social media, there's God mode for any like relatively complex and interconnected like code that an engineer or coder would need to maybe turn on for various ostensibly like work related and legitimate purposes. But like with a lot of things, when you have a feature like that and it becomes known, it can be abused, and so it is not. entirely unheard of or uncommon, certainly for God mode to be abused. I mean, people talk about like turning on cheats in video games. There's the old thing, like
The
going all
game
the way
genie,
back to, I think, yeah, going all the way back to like, yeah, the game genie, all
or
that
up,
kind of
up,
stuff.
down, down, left, right,
Yeah,
B8,
yeah, the
start.
Pokemon days and this and that. You know, you buy a cheat off of whatever place that may or may not have been like um, leaked from the official company, or may have just been, reverse engineered. A lot of cheats from modern games are reverse engineered. They're basically like the equivalent of hacks that third parties just develop, like kind of like developing third party, phone cases. But in this case, it's like, how do you make it so that your character will always headshot in a video game? But God mode and Twitter is like, hey, I can like do all this stuff and access all this data that I may or may not necessarily need to or should, certainly as a regular user, even as a regular engineer doing my everyday work. But if I absolutely need to, I can do this. But the thing is, like, what happens when people who don't need to do it, and what happens when too many of those people know it exists? But sorry, go on.
I like that you know that's a really good context on everything, and that's why I'm bringing Twitter into the conversation. It's not even to pick on Twitter; it's more to highlight Twitter to make sure that everybody's kind of aware that like this does exist in every single software that you have. So, for example, Microsoft. When I'm logging into my Windows desktop, I'm writing things in uh, Word. Sorry, I was going to say Docs the entire time. But either way, whether it's Word or Docs, your Google Docs or your Google Sheets or your Excel spreadsheets, all of this stuff, the PDFs you're working on, like everybody's using some company's software internally, like the government, the corporations, everybody. And so, like, now that you know that God mode exists within every single these back doors, I mean, the government even asked
Mhm.
for back doors for most places. That was where Apple and the CIA or FBI, whoever FBI,
FBI, yeah.
yeah, yeah,
The FBI and the SCIA, frankly, and the NSA and the intelligence states, the deep state. I don't even like getting into this stuff, but like it is known. It is known. That's another meme. It is known. It is known that they uh, encourage companies to make these backdoors for their use that the public is not supposed to know about, and that essentially we cannot opt out from. Like um, the phones that we all have probably have some degree of, you might call it spyware, you might call it whatever, that is behind the scenes, that Google or Apple, especially Google, quote unquote, this is the gloss. Sorry, like Apple doesn't do this, Google does, but they both do
yeah.
to
They
varying
all
degrees.
do.
That governments and corporations have access to without our consent. But sorry, anyway, keep interrupting.
Oh no, dude. Continue interrupting. That's what a conversation is.
Yeah, 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 yeah. It's back and forth. It's dialogue.
Yeah, it's absolutely cool. So, at what point when we know? So right now, go back to the pull this out to the Getty lawsuit against Stability AI, along
Mhm.
with Midjourney and I can't remember the other one, DeviantArt, whoever else. That's not. They're
Oh
all
yeah,
getting
yeah, Dolly too.
yeah, yeah. There's two different lawsuits because there's three artists that started a class action against them, and then there is the Getty lawsuit, and
Hmm.
they're essentially saying that when our information after post publishing, that's what they're kind of all fighting over right now is who owns the rights post publishing. And there's some other wonky things that'll go like with the AI copyright for the comic that's also involved in this. But all of that right now that everyone's focusing on is the data scraping and the ability to apply AI to something that you've chosen to put out there for the world and you want spread out there. But when we think about how backdoors and God mode work, we also know that the AI that these people use, like by Adobe, Google, Microsoft, Apple, all of them, Meta, that have all of our family connections, friend connections, our all of our information. Like I have everything on the internet, just like you. I have so much information that's in the cloud that's like within different things, and it gets to a point where like for example LastPass was recently hacked where all of their information could be theoretically unlocked and encrypted or decrypted to
Mhm.
unlock a huge stash of things. So everyone has to figure out what to do with that. Bitcoin one day with quantum computing could be like unlocked. There's a lot of like,
Oh yeah, we should actually we kind of talked about like what it is and that it's everywhere, but here's like a use case to make things concrete because people like examples and analogies. I found that at least. So another concrete use case going back to God mode for Twitter, for example, would say now I think they changed the term internally to privileged mode, but they still have the same functionality. Someone hacked in even that is not exactly what people think it is when people say hack. They social engineered. They kind of like fished and kind of tricked really a Twitter employee, probably multiple, to get access to that employee's credentials and then get access to God mode, which they used to tweet from multiple accounts because God mode allows you, among other things, to tweet from other people's accounts on Twitter, privilege mode. Um, they used it to tweet from multiple accounts, verified accounts, back when that was more, when quote unquote being verified meant something.
yeah,
Yeah, you and I both know what like there's a little bit of a with that whole thing, but there's an asterisk for sure. Even before Elon Musk, there's
yeah,
an asterisk to verification. But regardless, this is back in like 2019, I think, as well. And oh no, sorry, 2020. So the scam basically was after getting access to Godmo and tweeting, they had Apple and Jeff Bezos and probably Elon Musk and yeah, I think actually Elon Musk and a bunch of other high profile verified accounts tweet out a link saying, "Hey, I'm going to give away money, but first, this is the whole Nigerian prince thing. But first, make some like good faith payment to this thing." And that was like, um, any good faith payments made to this link will be doubled and returned back to you. And so, of course, oh, it's Elon Musk saying it's Apple saying this. Apple, by the way, the official Apple account. Fun fact for those who don't know, it's a little bit of Twitter trivia. Never tweets. It runs ads. It never actually makes tweets. The Apple account, if you go to it, it'll say zero tweets. Anyway, so that's what God mode is used for, this scam. And so that's an example of a use case where it's like maybe it's not a great thing that this feature exists when the abuse could be it could have like very real consequences, not just like the nebulous idea of hey, they're spying on us or hey, I feel uncomfortable. It's you're invading my privacy in a very like non-concrete way or abstract way. But like no, like the actual consequences are like someone could use your information, if not to specifically hurt you, then to hurt others with your information, if that makes sense. So,
100%. And it can be used for a lot of things. It can be used to manipulate people in a lot of ways. The last two elections, I'd say the last actually four presidential elections, give or take, have been very deeply affected and impacted by social media in different ways. The internet, but social media as it went on, but like is what it became. But
so you said four. I'm trying to think. Okay, so we're talking about multiple Obamas. That's what it is.
yeah, yeah,
Four? Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think we're going all the way back to Bush. But
yeah.
no, yeah,
It's
yeah,
it's
yeah,
been
yeah.
a
No,
while
we're
since
definitely
since
no, yeah, exactly.
Obama's been. It
Yeah,
feels
no,
like it
it's
hasn't
it's
been that long, but it's been a while.
No, it has. So two presidents, man. We're three presidents, or two presidents past him. But yeah, no, absolutely. 2008 was a huge thing for social media for a number of reasons. Obviously, I mean the primaries, like literally. I was just watching a clip yesterday. Digressions upon digressions. I'll get out of this quick, but someone was talking about it was like the comedian Gary Owen. The black people who aren't watching this or listening to this. Sorry, that's a joke. People who know, but black people don't tend to listen to podcasts. That's a thing. I can say that for those who know, I am black. But uh, he's a big name in the black community. They love him, Gary Owen. But he was talking about like the primaries, like Hillary versus Obama. Like we don't generally, I mean, with the exception of maybe Trump back from 2016, we don't talk about primaries. Like people don't like make entire comedy routines off of like even for general, for presidential level, you don't talk about primary. People don't talk about like whoever McCain was running against in the primary for the Republican nomination in 2008. But for some reason, that was, I mean, I know why. That was a big one. But anyway, so yeah, social media was a big deal for 2008, 2012, 2016, and now, 2020. So, go on.
And so, how much do you feel that, like, where do you feel the line should be essentially as to where AI is and isn't allowed to be applied? Because at each level of this tech stack, I mean, we're a year into where people are starting to even pay attention to it because it's like the pretty things have been coming out of it because of generative AI. But when I when I was working in the bank,
Hmm.
from 2005 to 2011, I basically, what we were doing was I got dropped in the middle of the digitization of all of their paper documents, and we were doing a lot of the automation basically on back end operational automation. And it's funny because I used to have God mode access to Bank of America countrywide
Oh
systems
God. Yeah, yeah. Go on.
because they have, just to kind of dive into this a little bit, the way that the banks are set up, it's kind of like if you ever see like someone go to a bank vault, things like that, it's always a two-person thing. There's going
Hmm.
to be two keys involved in everything. A lot of securities are two key authentication is essentially what this is. The human version of this that still that put into the computers and is still in use today. And so every profile within the banking industry, there's a lot of different profiles, but they can basically be divided, for the most part, to two different
Oh, right.
categories. Where one is allowed
Sorry,
to.
I was just looking at an article here. Go on.
Oh, you're good. Oh yeah, I am looking at that article. We'll get into that too.
No,
Oh,
no,
you're
no.
reading. You're
Not
reading the
that one.
copyright
Not that
article.
one.
Oh,
No, 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 no. That I sent you that just to make sure we were on the same page with that one.
gotcha.
You said Bank of America and Countrywide, and I'm like, oh right, Bank of America bought Countrywide because they
Yeah, yeah,
failed.
yeah.
Go on.
So through that whole transition, that's what I worked through that whole transition from Countrywide to Bank of America. That was like where I was at, and
Hmm.
so all of the back end profiles, they in the banking thing, it boils down to one person can write a check, one person can sign a check. And
Hmm.
the reason is because like if you had one person that could like write and sign it, then like they one person could just walk off with all the money. Um, but when you have two people involved, that was like, I mean, they have two different steps all the way through. But I had one of the access because I did a lot of I was a business systems analyst, so I was kind of like the translator between the IT and the business units through the whole process of automating their whole back end operations. Um, they they gave me access to do certain things that I had to have God mode in there, and so when I was fixing whatever I was fixing in the back end, basically there was like direct things like if you change one thing in one field on this page, you had to go to this page and also change one thing on this field to corresponding thing, and if you didn't, the automated rules would crash. And whenever you hear the word overnight processing in banks, what it is that they're running these set of automated rules at night where it's the least amount of people basically during like the down hours
Hmm.
and the least stress on their operations and their infrastructure. They're running this set of automated rules, and a bunch of them. It's like a what do they call it? Like the Rube Goldberg device, like Mousetrap, where like every little thing depends on something else, and like it gets triggered to the next one. And like if you pull one stick out of there by fucking up one of those fields, then you end up just crashing the whole thing. And so
Yeah.
I had done that one day. I had had this God access for like a year and a half, and there was something that I don't remember what it was that day that like I never had to fix before, and so I was struggling my way through, and I just wasn't paying attention. I didn't save. Like someone called me to do something. I don't know what it was. I got distracted. I didn't save the second change, and didn't even think about it until the next morning when I walked into work. My boss was literally at the front of the office. Like we were usually on the second floor, and so like I never even usually saw her when I came in the morning until like noon, give or take, because she was in her office doing things. But like
Hmm.
she was waiting right there and immediately was like smiling like, so I got a call, and it was the CTO of Bank of America. I can't remember his name anymore, but he
Chief
basically,
Technology Officer.
no, I can't remember his like first and last name, but yeah, but
No, that's
yeah,
fine.
yeah,
But
the
yeah,
chief
Chief
technology
Technology
officer.
Officer.
He had gotten a text overnight on his beeper. This was still, I mean, this was in 2000. nine, 10 in that range.
Oh, right. People, well, even then, I think beepers were kind of going out of style a little bit, but
Yeah,
yeah,
they
the
still
beepers are
weren't
still
around. It
a
was
thing.
only unless like you were like you needed an emergency line. It's like the bat phone kind of thing. Like that was his work beeper in case he like had to like actually
Yes.
drop out of his personal life for any reason. Like nothing else. There's no reason he would have let work wake him up unless it was an emergency, basically. And he got woken up
Yes.
at like 2 in the morning, and by the time like it was like 5 in the morning, he had figured out what the fuck. Like he got called in there to figure out what was wrong. He fixed it, and they immediately pulled like, okay, well, who did this? And then my name came up, so then like shit rolled downhill. And by
Penny!
7 a.m., as I'm strolling in, all of a sudden like that's why she's there is because like the of the entire Bank of America, the chief technology officer had what I apparently was now on his exactly that. And when I left, funny enough, since I left, because I became a whistleblower, is how I got into HuffPost and all this other stuff. Was
Mhm.
I had leaked a bunch of stuff, and they now have a folder that's called Long Term Security Concern Brian Penny at Bank of America. When I started blogging,
Jesus
I know this.
Christ.
I know this because when I started the blog, and I was going through regulators, and I did like play by play during like live streams as they were doing things, and I was talking to a bunch of different regulators in New York and Washington and shit, and they were reading my blog, and someone put it onto a spreadsheet, and then somebody else was trying to figure out why, and they clicked on it, and so from my back end and my WordPress back end, I was able to see the actual folder called Long Term Security Concern Brian Petty, and then like the network path to it within Bank of
Right.
America's network because they did not. It was that easy to see the inside information because they clicked on a link on my website while I was talking
Yeah.
about them, and that is how quickly. That is why a lot of these privacy laws are going into place. Like the U.S. is very quickly, state by state at least, moving
Mhm.
towards like the GDPR that Europe has, and doing that, doing the consumer
Do you want
protections.
some cookies or all the cookies? Sorry, go
Yeah,
ahead.
yeah. The third party cookies, by the way, is what really got hit. First party cookies are fine. You're still allowed to track. Like, I wonder how much. There's two things. There's a lot of things now I'm thinking about this. Word. I've used Word for a long time. It used to be WordPerfect is what I used to use, the Corel open source kind of thing. That's what my mom was a transcriptionist and a typist, so I got early on the computers and typing programs and
Mhm.
things. And the autocorrect and the dictionary are two things. Like the beginning, I remember at the beginning it was a manual dictionary. You added everything into there, just like your phone on anybody's phone, where you add things into the dictionary, and it does predictive
Predictive
text and
text.
things like that. Like that
Yeah.
all was going through Word before it got into kind of everything that it is now. And when you think about how clunky and how clumsy that is, like I don't really believe that like the like AI as fast as, for example, the generative AI images I think are have gone very fast. A lot of the pattern recognition things that do operational things in the back end and the operations and the supply chain, they've gone really fast. But when it comes to mimicking humans and understanding what we're talking about when we're typing things, I don't know that AI has any idea, and I wonder how much like a Microsoft Office person or a Google Docs person or any Adobe, how much they're really looking into. Even Evernote was one you maybe think of because I have a bunch of stuff on Evernote from over the years because I've had it since my like first Android phone. God knows when that was, or even before then, actually. And I think about it, and when you think about how much private information, like they all know more about you than you do. To be real, even if you have multiple
Oh,
accounts
right.
across things, like they still will figure that
Concrete.
out.
Yeah, sorry again. Concrete examples, right? And I think there's like literally been like case studies on this. Your phone can tell, your phone can predict like illnesses or even pregnancies in some cases, certainly before like friends and family, um, or spouses even.
Oh, there's an example
Um,
on pregnancies. Not to interrupt, but the Target got
no,
in
yeah, I'm
trouble
sure there
for
is.
the cookies because they had sent a an ad to
Hmm.
Target had targeted an ad to the dad that was selling him something for his daughter's pregnancy, essentially, and he had
Right.
no idea until that ad had come through. So because marketers, more than government, marketers are the ones who really are advertisers and things like that, are the ones that are really like digging into this more than anything else.
Sure, but like also like your phone knows that you're gay, or it can tell you that you're gay, uh, and like there's a whole other thing like telling people what their sexuality is. It's a whole other don't get me started, but like literally like your phone, people talk about like spying and all this thing, the privacy concerns, but the reality is, like you said, it's down to marketing. It's down to like how do we make money off of this. The thing of like people talk about your Alexa is spying on you and listens to every word. Yes and no. More no than yes, to be honest. From just talking to like actual people who are in these fields, because having those things always be on and always be listening and transcribing, quote unquote, like what you're saying, is like a billion dollar a bunch of billion dollar phone calls to Jeff Bezos or whoever took over Amazon. Now it's like it'd be completely inconvenient to actually have it be running the way people think it's running. But the reality is, if you think your phone doesn't know that you like furries, or that you're pregnant or whatever, it does. So those kind of things, it does know, because it can sell stuff off of that to you. It can sell you porn. It can sell you pregnancy tests. Yeah. Anyway, go on.
And another example of that, I remember this was in the 2010s, early 2010s. Amazon got in trouble because what was happening was parents were looking at porn and other things online, adult things as adults do, and the your
You're right.
oh yeah, sorry, there was a bunch of feedback coming on your side.
Oh, my bad. I just got up to get something from my desk. I'm
Oh,
going
you're
back
good.
to. I was lying in my bed and I was holding the phone. Oh, maybe it's because the phone got covered by like a blanket or something. Apologies.
Oh
Hey, I'm
no,
back.
you're good. The oh, what was I saying? Shoot, I'm high.
We were talking about privacy and parents watch. So how
Oh,
we got
the
to
Amazon,
parents watching
Amazon.
porn.
Yes. So
Okay.
sorry. The parents were looking at a bunch of unsavory things, and when they were doing that, all their information was they would go to Amazon, they would buy things, but then eventually they would be on a road trip and they would just throw the tablet to their kids and assume that the Fire tablet was just gonna like play like their YouTube video when they're whatever it is that they were gonna have them to watch to shut up basically. And because of that, even though they have it on kid mode, all the parent modes are on and everything like that, but the cookies didn't know that like the cookies are not supposed to track anyone under 13 at a bare minimum of everything that like may or may not be going on. It shouldn't be happening unless you're like 13 or older, or 12 or older, whatever it is. But the
13. Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
13.
yeah, yeah. And so like if you have a 5, 6 year old, things like that, they don't know anything better. And what was going on was eventually, because in order to monetize the Fire tablet, Amazon had to run ads, and it was running it based off of cookies. So all of a sudden, these kids were getting ads for like dildos, erotic porn, or erotic fiction. I mean, any kind of like adult type things that Amazon does have on its. I mean, anything I guess could be a dildo if you want it to be, or a sex toy if you want it to be. But like, they were getting
Yeah, I
very
get what you
offensive
mean. Yeah, they're
things.
they're getting like a little bit spicier than Anne Rice novels,
Yeah,
and maybe like some massagers that weren't quite. They're a little bit
yeah,
more than massagers. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. I got you.
And so the Amazon is well. This is it used to be a little bit. It was more pornish in Amazon, and this is what changed it was that the parents ended up suing in a class action. They sued Amazon and blamed them for showing offensive ads to their children, and then that caused Amazon to erase a bunch of, or deplatform, as they will, a bunch of erotic fiction novelists, a bunch of companies that made things, and this made the erotic fiction community specifically like went off on Twitter and just created this whole like campaign against Amazon to try. I believe they countersued them. I have to look up how that whole thing played out at the end. But by that point, like Amazon had figured out, like, okay, well now we've got to figure out how to stop people from seeing like the way that we are
NSFW
portraying
content.
things. Yeah,
Oh. So how to not see also how the way the sausage is made as far as like how they sell stuff and market stuff.
yeah.
Yeah,
While
that's the real.
defending these high profile like lawsuits on both sides, basically, while trying to walk the line, be like, no, I don't know what you're talking about.
Right, of course, because things anything that they disclose potentially is discriminate is incriminating is incriminating as well as like a trade secret as well as just like bad PR. Yeah, that's quite a tightrope walk. I was going to come back with just like a joke. So this is why I can't find porn on Prime, unless you have certain channels turned on. But yeah,
You still
that makes
can. It's just
sense.
harder than it
Yeah,
used
yeah,
to
yeah, yeah,
be.
exactly. But yeah, it's funny. I remember I actually saw, I actually I remember I tweeted this out on Reddit before I was exiled from Reddit. Um, I saw a like legit, I think I can probably still find it somewhere. It was a hentai coloring book.
I
And
believe
now,
it.
to be fair, coloring books that are sort of memeable and maybe aimed at a more, not even just mature, but just like they're not aimed at like the obvious audience of literal children. Those are a thing. Like there's a Spiral coloring book. Spiral is like a very weird and graphic, not porny, more violent. Um, uh, um, a Japanese manga series by a particularly weird and graphic artist who's famous in that field. Um, so like coloring books for adults basically are a thing, but it's like this is literal porn, and I think it said somewhere like fun for the whole family. There was some because it was probably AI generated like descriptions or just contextualizations because like the listing was probably like partly generated by AIs. It's just like it's just like some guy overseas or some company overseas just like automating their listing on Amazon. It's just like here is this great coloring book, fun for the whole family, but it's like this literal porn. But anyway, sorry, go on.
They borderline did that on YouTube as well. There was a lot of very questionable things that were being presented, and this is all after post Amazon's lawsuit, by the way. All the problems with YouTube, where YouTube Kids basically was filled with a lot of very questionable things, and even the things to be real. When it comes to YouTube Kids, that what was his name, Ryan? I can't remember his last name. Ryan's World, I think, is what it is. That little Asian kid that was the most top selling YouTube star for like the back half of the 2010s, and he's maybe 12 or 13 now. He was like 8 years old, I think, when he started hitting the top. But when you think about how, and there's a bunch of families that have put their kids, very young kids, onto YouTube for views. I haven't even put my cat on. I mean, this cat, obviously, I have that I've made, but my actual cat I have not put on there.
Right, your pet cat. Yeah, you haven't visualized or I don't know what the word is. You haven't used your actual pet for clout. Come on, man. You're screwing up, man.
It's not fully true. I haven't used it for YouTube views. I have posted pictures on Facebook, like a proud dad, and a on Instagram. I don't know. My Instagram's private, so like I don't. I just have like my friends and family that are on there for the most part.
Right.
I tried to do that with Facebook, but it got harder and harder as groups came along and all these other kind of things.
For those who don't know, again, it's so weird to like think about how this is going to be like eventually edited and released and how it's going to be received later. So I'm like thinking about the future audience. I don't know, but for those who don't know, like it's a weird thing. Like Brian is the driving force for this, little podcast we're doing, but essentially, Brian and I, if you think it's one way, it's actually the other way, which is also ironic because of we were talking this, before we started, like how it's your name, but my name is like an alias, quote unquote. It's my username. And you have an image, not your face, but still an image, and I have like just a letter next to my name for whatever this video component will be. But like I'm the clout chaser. Brian doesn't want any of this. Brian does not actually want to be famous. He's specifically tried to avoid becoming famous. He has had many opportunities. He's not leveraged them to full his potential because he doesn't like it. So like, if you think it's one way, it's actually the other way. If the roles were reversed, Brian would very happily be like the guy quietly behind the scenes, and I would be like the big, name, face, personality. Just putting it out there. But anyway, go on.
That is kind of funny. That is good context to put in there because I do talk about media and fame and all sorts of things a lot, and it's because I've been surrounded by it. But it's that's a whole other conversation about that. But that, I mean, to be fair, to put some other context on it while you're talking about that, why I am so fascinated by the creator economy in general and AI within the creator economy is because I've seen over the years different ways in which everything got merged into the creator economy. Just like we started at the top, where Bill O'Reilly is no different than like Louis C.K. or Jewel or anybody. I'm trying to think of like someone. I don't know. I'm thinking of
You're
Casey.
just trying to think of random celebrities. No offense to any people
I
who
know.
name drop in weird contracts. Like those are three people who probably would not want to be associated with each other, to be honest. But I
It,
get
it,
what you mean.
it's funny because I picked out I was trying to pick like the three randomest people I could think of, and then I really did pick three random people. But anyways, no matter what type of or Stephen King or whoever it is, whatever you do, if you're a musician, you're an artist, you're an influencer, whatever it
Tom
is,
Hanks, who
it's
who
all the
who
exact
got
same
like
game.
yeah, who got like recently like if there's a such thing as being canceled by the right, he was like re-canceled by the right like last weekend on Twitter.
Tom
Uh,
Hanks.
uh, Yeah, like not really, but it's just like, oh, like a video from 2020 was recirculating. At the height of the pandemic, he was saying some very like pro-mask stuff, like, oh my God. But like, they're like, oh, how dare Tom Hanks be pro-masks and pro this and that. It's like,
Didn't he
are
and
you
his wife get
surprised?
COVID?
Yeah, no, I think they were in Australia or New Zealand.
Yeah,
I
I
think they
remember
were in
them
Australia.
being like the first like big names where they're like, oh god, they got COVID, but they live like it's oh
Yeah,
my
yeah,
god, this
yeah.
is horrible. That's when you took it seriously was because like they got COVID. Like I feel like he can
Oh,
wear a
yeah.
mask, it's fine.
No, yeah, their first-hand experience. Well, he was saying like, he was encouraging others to wear masks to the point of saying, and again, at the 2020, so different context, in my opinion. I don't think he would make these same comments necessarily or make them as stridently in 2022 or 2023. But he said, like, I don't understand people who don't wear a mask. It's the bare minimum. I'm trying to contextualize this. You made an analogy to driver's licenses. It's like um, stopping at stop signs. If you can't do the bare minimum, then like I don't know that I can trust you to be out in the world, kind of thing is what he said. But it's like again, 2020, COVID. It's context matters, but that's just mentioning Tom Hanks because that'd be probably be a useful example for like a random celebrity for the thing you're talking about. People who basically exist in this weird entertainment cultural soup where they're just kind of not famous for being famous and not Kim Kardashian. They all have like all the people we've mentioned so far have like legit jobs. And no offense to, I mean, honestly, we all kind of know the deal with Kim, but like and I talked to you privately about how like I've turned around on Kim a little bit, but like Jewel is a singer, songwriter. Louis C.K. is a canceled but on the rebound comedian. Bill O'Reilly is or was a media personality, conservative commentator, presenter,
He
this and that.
still is. He's just on more different
He has a
shows. He's not on
podcast now.
Fox anymore.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. He got fired from Fox or severance package, whatever, because he also got it's weird like the line of this canceled versus like consequent like actual consequences. I would say kind of a mixture, but like sexual misconduct. He got me too'd. Uh, I'm not saying like that's wrong. By the way, I'm not saying like his case is like I'm not trying to trivialize it. I don't doubt that he was a creep, but he got me too'd, and he was already kind of on his way out anyway. I think I don't know all the details in this, but I think were they were not disinclined to having him leave at some point soon anyway. And so yeah, he left and got severance, and now he like does a podcast in his garage or whatever. But anyway, sorry, I keep interrupting you. You're trying to get a point.
Oh no, you're all good. But basically, so I mean, this is the Me Too thing is a good example of like the high end of being canceled. I guess cancel culture. But on the other end of it, there are entertainers now, or creators, we'll call it, of any kind, that have gone on the other end. Where when you watch over the last from 2010s, basically, when the rise of the influencers, the rise of YouTubers and TikTokers and tweeters, I guess we call them. It's funny because I wouldn't ever think about like a Facebook influencer or LinkedIn influencer, but any social influencers in general, and any of those kind of things, Twitch, as that happened,
Oh,
and all
LinkedIn
these
link
things.
influencers are very much a thing. Just
Oh
Dan
yeah, yeah.
Price, shout out.
I
But
am
so go on.
I am a micro influencer there now. I've got like 11,000 something
Oh
followers
yeah, I
on
saw.
there.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So
But
and it's funny. I'm the nerdiest of all influencers. It's the one place where I feel comfortable. Like yeah, I'll build up a LinkedIn. That feels like okay, but like So anyway, but on the other end of this, what happened is, so especially during COVID, COVID is where you really saw it happen. But even before that, it was all kind of bubbling up for this. But when COVID shut down all the live venues, this is where the entertainment industry and the all the touring musicians and actors and comedians and anybody who does anything on a stage, basically, even as public speakers, I mean, they all end up on Clubhouse, basically, and because the circuits were shut down and like all the trade shows, all of it. And so that's kind of what Clubhouse was, by the way, in that era. The post-pandemic was this hodgepodge of all of the people who were stuck at home, or even if they went out, there was not crowds like there were on Clubhouse. So they just stayed on Clubhouse until things reopened, which when they eventually did, kind of killed Clubhouse. But so you've got these two different forces that were fighting with each other. You've got, we'll use an example. A hard example is Eddie Brill. Eddie Brill is was for a lot of um, David Letterman's career. He was the opening act, the opening comedian that warmed up the crowd. And
did you
this,
tell me about this before?
yeah, I did
Someone
tell you.
told me about this before.
I did tell
Okay,
you
good. Go
this.
on.
I told you on Reddit Talk, so we'll
Yeah,
talk
yeah,
about
yeah.
that one. By the end of this, we'll talk about that. But yeah, so he had basically the most prestigious position that you would want in comedy. You've got the top one of the top late night show hosts. You're there in front of him, and you're meeting all these people, meeting everyone he meets, all this kind of stuff. It's like being the opening band for U2 or something. Um, and now, since the pandemic and since Letterman's done the switched over to Netflix and doesn't need the warm up or any of that kind of stuff, Eddie Brill had to go through a transition through Clubhouse where he was trying to figure out Instagram. I mean, the guy was in his 60s at the time, late 60s, I want to say.
Yeah, yeah. Basically the TLDR is like a comedian who came up one way in a system where like it's Letterman, it's Carson, it's this and that, it's comedy clubs, it's just kind of hustling and making a name for yourself is like, and I not necessarily making a name because he wasn't like a household name. He was like a warm up guy whose name you didn't know because he wasn't on the taping.
But
He
everyone in the
has to
industry
figure
knew
out
him.
exactly. People in the industry knew him. He was bankable. He'd get a job, this and that. But the sort of the nature of the business changed, and now he has to like figure out social media as like literal like senior citizen, a guy in his 60s, like. Oh, hey, I'm on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook and da, 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 da. It's like,
Yeah,
man,
because he would lose jobs to basically people were hiring. I don't know if you remember when the YouTube
they're hiring
or
based off of
TikTok,
like
they all went through that whole thing of like trying to become rappers and musicians and all these other things. They took all the stage time. They were the ones who got hired. Were these unskilled teenagers?
influencers. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So
Yeah,
like
yeah.
YouTubers and influencers started doing
started
comedy
started
clubs
following their
because
heroes because they were doing comedy clubs, music. There was a bunch of them that tried to become musicians and try to do live music, try to do live comedy, try to do all of
rappers.
it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
No,
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
They
Because
filled
because
the industry and it pushed out the old guys that like if they have to choose between like a Jake Paul trying to rap on stage and Eddie Brill who people didn't know like who actually could make the entire crowd like bring the crowd the house down but Logan Paul could fill the fucking bar. It was
yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Basically, it became this thing of like you have to have a following because a following guarantees that the thinking goes. This is kind of true, but not always. A following guarantees ticket sales. So even if the actual content, even if the actual end result, content calling life before this content is awkward, but like even if the actual end result is mediocre, the ticket gets sold. The venue makes money, and that is kind of what it boils down to. So basically, he had to figure out a way to make sure. Essentially, he had to do what Dane Cook figured out with MySpace back in like the
Yeah,
2000s, which is
exactly.
which is like make a following on social media so that you are bankable, regardless. And not to say that Dane Cook is not a good comedian, but he was like the pioneer of this. Most people agree on this. You have to like have a following on social media so that you can be a bankable entity where if they were to go online and check, they'd be like, oh yeah, everybody loves him online. Everybody loves this person online. He will actually be able to sell a venue. Whereas like if you are Eddie Brill, unfortunately, people don't know who you are, and it's like, all right, you're a good comedian, but are you going to be able to move tickets? So sorry, go on.
And that is, I mean, that right there is the dichotomy of the haves and have-nots within the creator economy. It used to be where clout was not as measurable, I suppose is the best way to say it. It was based off, it was more of a meritocracy, or based off of uh, the actual
It was more
skill that you might have
nebulous.
had,
It
I
was more. It was.
suppose.
It was more nebulous. If you people understood the idea of a Q rating, it's something I talk about sometimes on Twitter myself. Sometimes when I'm talking about like popular culture and comics, but the idea of a Q rating was a more nebulous thing that wasn't, yeah, explicitly measurable. Whereas now, especially even in the MySpace days, it was kind of nebulous, or it wasn't like as heavily tracked and thought of in all circles. Whereas now, it's explicitly a thing where if you're talking to an editor at a publisher, comic, novel, whatever, if you're talking to agents, managers for film, television, bookers for comedy clubs, they know of, and to varying degrees, it depends on the person, depends on the business, to varying degrees, care about your follower count. If you are a literal nobody on social, that's going to hold you back potentially versus, because again, everything is a competition, versus someone who isn't, right? Like if it's me versus you, for example, right? One could argue, this is no shade on either of us, it's just a statement of fact, that you are the more bankable entity just because you have more connections and you have some better following on various platforms, even though you're trying to kind
Debatable.
of eschew that. Whereas I am more of the untested thing. It might be the case, right, that if I was to go on stage, I could like do a pretty decent like Henry Rollins spoken word, performance. Whereas you would not be as interested in doing that. But they're going to be like, Brian Penny's got like 1,000, like 10,000 people or whatever. Like, come on. So
Fair. Um, right now, I'm thinking that I'm the more bankable one just because, like, I have moving lips and I kind of like have life to me, whereas you're a Q that is
hey man,
kind
I
of.
was
It
trying to
looks like
be.
I'm talking to an AI.
I think I was being pretty fair with that. I don't think just take a shot. Come on.
I'm just
But no,
fucking with
yeah,
you.
no,
I fucking
no,
dude.
no, yeah,
It took a lot to do this. Like I don't wake up looking this pretty. Well, I
yeah,
did.
exactly.
I did this
I
morning, but it was because I was up all night. Sorry,
Yeah,
go ahead.
exactly. You have that overnight glow from like being sleep deprived and or drunk.
Yeah,
Um,
my eyes are like
uh,
bloodshot.
yeah, there you go. Yeah, they're perfect. Just nice and blue and white. Uh, um, this is behind the scenes, so you can cut this or not. But like, I'm guessing you don't wear a rig, right? Because like you're not like one of those like
Oh no no
hardcore
no.
VTuber
Well,
girls where like they literally like wear a rig on their head that tracks all their movements.
first off, the e-girls, the VTubing e-girls especially, uh, that is a whole thing that fucking love, and I almost thought about getting into that, like getting. I've tried the AI voice changers, and it's really hard to do, so I'm trying to figure out how to pull that off. But I do have a Leap Motion
My
controller
voice,
to do
grandma.
that. If I wanted to, I could. I am using my iPhone. I did not get a harness for it. I've got it on a adapter on a regular camera tripod. But I could set that up if I wanted to. The one thing right now, this particular model that I'm using, this cat, I it's 2D, and so it's a pain in the ass. So I only have the upper body right now that actually exists, and only the head is actually animated, even though the tail's like moving a little bit. But the I haven't got the full mapping yet done for the arms. But I do have the Leap Motion controller, which is what you need to do that. It's very simple to just add that onto this, and then I could like wave and do all those kind of things. And there's a bunch of other. The face is what I care about the most. Is that there's extra little things that when you see those the VTuber girls, like they each strand of hair that they do is like a whole different like th- layer basically on Photoshop that has to be animated separately. So like every little thing that you have to like move every little thing, and they spend hours and thousands of dollars to get theirs. This is like a $200 job on Fiverr to get the thing drawn, to commission that, and then to commission it to get rigged basically through Live 2D is the program that I.
Yeah. Now I kind of wish I had some kind of avatar because I could like at least like do expressions like smile or laugh with what you're saying. But yeah, I get you. I know the vibes. I was gonna say something like go face. It's all about the face. At some point, I am just gonna have to like just fix my makeup and go and go visual. I joke sometimes that like the only reason why I don't go visually live more, like do more video stuff because I'm ugly. I'm not, but like I'm being humble slash facetious, but I'm not like I'm not a Morris Chestnut. Let's put it that way. I'm like he's a six at best, something like that. I'm in like in the six range, but I will go visually like facially live at some points. I promise. Anyway.
I have camera equipment and lighting and all that stuff that would make it like that I could do like an 8K or 4K at least broadcast with myself. I hate doing it though. I mean, my old YouTube channel. That's basically I started off wherever whatever I had, my phone camera or my GoPro. I basically tried to use that to film some stuff, and then I eventually bought a DSLR camera that I used for also video, but it was hard to do video. But then I ended up upgrading again to I've got a bunch of cameras actually, a bunch of microphones at this point, just because I went through that whole process of just swag bags. We'll get into that. That'll be a whole podcast thing one day, and we can do about all the free stupid shit they give you when you're in a certain bubble. When you're one of the haves, it's fucking stupid. But yeah, I of all of that, I really 2 years ago I made a bunch of different things. I can actually set you up with. I can probably add a seat to my animes, and so that you can do the same thing I am. And I have a bunch of different characters that I had made, so that like I own them, so that we don't have to worry about any of it. But even animes, even if you get it, you just download the free version. You could still see what I'm doing. Basically, you can do it on the phone, and there's a bunch of free things that you can do on there anyway. But
No, no, even. I'm sure it's not too difficult. With this we could pivot out of this because I'm sure some people their eyes are glazing over. But no, I honestly, it's more the simplest answer is often the best, and the simplest answer here is just like show your face. I'm not gonna make a big deal of it like Dream did. I'm not gonna like make it. Oh my God, face reveal. People already know what I look like if they go to a Twitter account. Like it's not a secret.
the
But
thumbnail of his video.
exactly. There you go. But I will probably just again like just have to like do my hair or lack thereof. I
I
will
hated all
involve
that stuff
or
too. Having to think about like your every little thing basically. Like I would
oh
have
yeah, yeah,
like a little
exactly.
eye booger or like a eyelash and a
Eye
face or something
boogers.
stupid.
Jesus.
Just
Yeah, exactly.
stupid
But
little
I will do my
things.
makeup. I will get myself all pretty for you boys and girls, and I'll just go live. Well, visually every once in a while. I mean, if Luke Thomas and others can do it, then I can do it too. It's not a big deal. But for right now, for like this first little try run that we're doing here, you'll have to settle for the brownish hue, which is fine. And again, if you want to see my face, you can find me online. I have gone back to the profile pic that you put is the profile pic that I have on my Twitter right now. The profile pic that I have still gotten the most positive remarks on of all the profile pics that I've taken, which is not that many, but or at least not that many people can find. But but it's a pretty decent one, so I'm happy with it. Anyway, moving on.
Are you familiar with skip tracing?
Oh, my immediate so I heard half of the term. My immediate thought is bounty hunter. What exactly? How close am I?
Pretty close. Not they do use skip tracers, and it's also in banking and any kind of things. It's what I used to work in collections when I was in college, and so it was it was a very interesting learning experience to learn like when somebody owes the bank a debt, what type of resources and APIs they had pulled together to be able to like find that person and to look all that stuff up and figure all that stuff out. So I was laughing. I brought it up because I was kind of laughing, thinking like as soon as you said like things that you can't find, I just started laughing because I do this with my parents and my brother and all these people all the time. We're like, hey, when did you get this email address? And they're like, dude, come on, man. Yeah, I know.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure people can find stuff like I think I don't think I've said it publicly, but it's certainly an ethos that I agree with, which is don't dare the internet. Don't fuck with cats. Don't fuck with cats.
Don't fuck the
Don't
beehive.
dare the internet. Yeah, it does exactly. Literally and metaphorically, the beehive, right? Don't fuck with Beyonce's fans. But yeah, the literal beehive either, or the metaphorical beehive. But like, don't dare the internet. So like, I don't generally put myself out there as like, oh yeah, come at me, bro. Like, I don't do that. But I would say to the extent that the visual component of my identity is less present, I would say that it is also just a case that is harder to find it's harder to find photos of me that I do not specifically want out there. Let's put it that way. It's like there's nothing there's nothing publicly that I've ever released, I think, that I would be terribly ashamed or embarrassed of at all. It's just a matter of like, again, because no one is actively following me, because these things, once you delete them, not that they're deleted forever at all. It's more just that like they tend to get kind of, it's like that your article on HuffPost, right? If we couldn't find like blog and social media like stuff about it, it'd be harder to find that article because it got, 401 or
It
404.
would have been
So
erased
at a
from
certain
history.
point, yeah, at a certain point, pictures that you don't care about and that you haven't deliberately made an effort to, and others haven't made an effort to archive, get 404 from the internet. So, like the previous profile picture of mine that I was using up until like last Sunday, when I basically like went into a social audio room and got like, I signed up for it, but like I got like the told all the ways in which I was fucking up with my social media, my Twitter profile, my social media presence, which is why it looks the way it looks now. Which some might say it looks a little forced or engineered. There's a reason for that. I'm working on it. It's a work in progress. At the very least, it looks more professional than it did. So like, I'd rather it look a little like, I hate to say inauthentic because I'm still me, but I'd rather look a little like engineered than like look like I literally don't know what I'm doing. But I changed my profile picture to the one that I'm using now. I said old profile pic as it is. It's a profile pic from like 2016, but it's better than what I had, which is like, kind of weird coloring and laser eyes, which, yeah, I mean, it's probably better that I not like actively tie my branding to crypto at this point. And Yeah, so it's for the better. Moving on.
Crypto's a
Do you
whole
want to
other
talk?
side on there. And by the way, I did get the "Don't fuck with cats" reference because I am familiar with that, my people.
There you go. There you go.
I
Oh, that's the other thing for you guys don't know. If it's not coming through a little bit already, Brian, you're not a boomer, but like you do sometimes you do have a I would say a Drax element in terms of like being on the spectrum, but like references may go over your head. You'll
hilarious.
recognize that they go over your head, but they'll go over your head.
No, and it is kind of funny. So to be fair, I'm on the cusp. I was born in 1980, so I'm on the bottom end of Gen X. Yeah, Gen X. Sorry, bottom end of Gen X and top end of Millennial. I almost said Gen Z because I questioned my own because I this whole thing
We're
because
roughly,
usually
we're roughly the same age. You're a little older than me, but we're roughly the
yeah,
same age.
yeah. It was because a friend a couple of weeks ago had her take a couple of BuzzFeed quizzes to figure out if she's actually millennial or Gen Z because she's on the cusp of the other end of it. And then I gave her another one that was like the full spectrum of things to see if she was a boomer as well because if she relates to me in any way, she's got to be a boomer. So it made me kind of laugh when he called me a boomer. And it's funny because when people say "okay, boomer," that whole thing that is something that like usually was talking about Generation X more than boomers. Boomers are like my parents who are chill grandparents at this point in their lives. They're in their golden years. I don't give a fuck. And so like the boomers they're mostly talking about, even at the time, like Obama, I think it was not even a boomer. He's in Gen X, give or take. But yeah, it's it is funny. I am kind of older on that end.
Well, I just meant it more in the sense of like it's for how online and how like connected you are. It is amazing to me sometimes that I'll
How
say a
out of touch
thing and
I
you'll be
am.
like, well, just like I'll say a thing and you'll be like, huh? Or you'll like I could tell like or it won't land and like you won't necessarily comment on it, but I can tell it didn't land. I'm just like, what? But I get it, right? You like in a way it's healthier. Like we joke again behind the scenes that like I'm the guy who's like spending entirely too much time on Twitter and Brian for reasons that are somewhat not in his control and somewhat they are in his control. He's very much not overly online, or at least not heavily on Twitter and other social media platforms. He has a life outside of all this stuff, which is probably for the better.
They
But
do have spurts sometimes. I've dove into, to be fair, 10 years ago I would have been deeply into Twitter. That was like my life. That's why I get why people like it there. Like I do totally get it, but like yeah, it just reaches a point where it's there's just I'm not a fan of having a direct connection from my brain to the public essentially because yeah, infosec.
that's exactly
That's the
why I
general
like it.
idea.
What I think what people dislike about Twitter more is like the pushback and the quote unquote negative I don't want to say quote unquote, but like the negative engagements they get. Like if everything they
The
got from Twitter was
toxicity of it.
yeah, yeah, no. If everything I got from Twitter was if like the platonic ideal that people like have in their head of Twitter and what they want, whether or not they admit it or not, whether or not they know it or not consciously, front of mind, subconsciously, what we all want is like we all imagine we're the hero of our own stories. We're all a little egoistic. We all imagine that like we're the shit, and so we go on there to muse. Some frankly go into there to pontificate. I used to say that like I used to say pontificate unironically, not realizing even what the word meant. I had to figure that. Realized it has effectively a very negative connotation. So I say muse is really the more platonic ideal. But people go on there and muse and share their thoughts and engage with other people. But what they dislike is more just like the negativity and in particular the pushback that they get. They don't mind being like an arrogant high-handed, negative person themselves. By the way, sorry if you can hear a little this thing in the background. Someone downstairs has decided they're going to start practicing their drumming in the house that I'm sharing. But
Nice.
anyway, uh, uh, but yeah, they don't mind like negativity from themselves. What they mind is negativity from other people, and in particular, like sort of being held to account for their own actions. That's why, like, one of the reasons that I try to engage with the platform and all these platforms is it's not as positive as possible, but as like responsibly, I guess, as ethically as possible, is because I recognize, again, like in the same way that you don't fuck with cats and don't dare the internet, to come at you, just don't be a jerk because at the end of the day, I think I had a tweet about this like in the last 24 hours. The people who will say like, "Oh man, we're all being horrible to each other. This place is so bad. This and that." They're usually the worst actors themselves. Like they're usually like the malignant
They
forces
built that
themselves.
themselves. That is
Yeah, yeah,
the
yeah.
echo chamber they
And
built.
they're kind of like excusing their own behavior in a way by like writing it off as like we're all this way. Like, no, not all of us. Like I'm not perfect, but I'm not actively going on there every day to yell at people or like act as if I know better than everyone. I'm usually, I'd like to think at least, trying to have conversations. I have my opinions, I have my takes, and I have my like hobby horses. I'd say the most obnoxious I can get is when I'm talking about comic books, if anything. But if it's politics, if it's news and current events, if it's anything where I like literally just am not an expert, which is frankly most things, I come at it with a place with a mind of humility and like asking questions, not just assuming I have the answers. But I think a lot of people, because again, we're egoistic and like sort of solipsistic by nature to some extent, especially the kind of personalities that thrive on social media. They don't always have that kind of regulator in their head of like, I should maybe tone it down. I should maybe like consider whether or not I have all the facts. I should maybe like be a little nicer. And surprise, surprise, things don't always end well when you behave poorly. Anyway, go on.
Fair. And yeah, that is true. We all build people who are surrounded by toxicity. I've definitely they're the ones who are there for that. They live for that. It's always funny to me when somebody that is kind of going into the firing range and going into all of that stuff starts complaining that like people are giving that back to them. Like that's what you created. There are certain ways. I mean, there are both in on Facebook and on LinkedIn. No matter or not LinkedIn, sorry, Twitter. LinkedIn is one of the ones. It's a whole other different thing. There's a level of professionalism that they hold it to, that they hold it to the professional standards. So there's a lot less trolling and tagging and all those kind of things that go on in there. But
But even then, as you probably, I think we talked about this before.
yeah,
The whole thing with like LinkedIn's becoming Instagram, like
yes,
food pics and all that other stuff. But sorry,
yes.
anyway.
And people, it's funny because like people will share like sad things sometimes where I'm really sad. Like very recently, it was I have a bunch of reporters that are on, or not even just reporters, people that work in the news. There's a lot of them are reporters, but like a lot of them are other things. But they is this woman who had posted that her dog. It was she had to basically put the dog down, and she posted a video of her crying, saying goodbye to the dog, and then like explaining the post in there. And I was looking through the reactions that you have. You've got like, love, celebrate, thoughtful, like all these kind of things. I was like, huh, how do
Tier,
I do this without like
right?
any kind of negative, like even a sad fate? You're not even allowed to be like
There's no
sad.
sad face.
No,
Oh, okay.
there's no sad, much less angry. It was like five different things, six different things, and they were all like levels of like celebrate, insightful, love, care, those kind of things. Care was closest
Again,
I got was like the smaller heart. It was like okay, care is the best thing I could do is say that like I care about this, but like
sure.
yeah, it wasn't like. But she's like this clip of her like a TikTok short thing on LinkedIn of her like crying about the dog, and I was like, oh, this is sad actually, but like. You can't be sad on LinkedIn. You can't be. There's no crying in baseball. We know that.
There's no crying in LinkedIn. Yeah, no, I get you. It's ironic as you're saying that again. I'm reminded of like, I wish I had emojis. Like the way I use like all these platforms, especially when it's like a conversation based thing, like social audio, especially like from I think 2021 onward, certainly last year. They have emojis now integrated. They have like reactions integrated. Spaces has it, Clubhouse has it. RIP. I say RIP. It still probably exists, but it seems like it's going to be dying soon. RIP. Reddit Talks had it. But I can't
Oh,
do
it's
any
dead.
emotes.
It's as dead as it's gonna. It'll still be
Yeah,
used
yeah,
within
yeah.
communities. It's a community tool, just like Discord stages. Like it'll
Oh
be used every
God,
once in a
this
while, I'm sure, but
like Discord stages. Oh God. Yeah, yeah.
it's all
Exactly.
happening
Yeah.
behind the
It'll just
scenes.
be. Yeah, yeah, exactly. And shout out to Signal, aka Peter Yang, man. He he pivoted at the perfect time. Anyway,
He did, and if you don't know Peter Yang, since you brought him up, he basically the creator economy on Substack is one of the best newsletters to keep up with all that stuff. And if I ever do show my face on this thing or actually do a live video at any given moment, I'll be sure that I'm wearing the Reddit Talk hoodie. That'll be my costume. That's what I'll make that is my costume for anytime I ever actually get on video, and that'll be my outdated reference that nobody else will get, much less
Reddit
that I
Talk
don't get
hoodie,
references.
Reddit Talk hoodie, and maybe like a Spotify Live or a Green Room
Green room,
even face mask.
hilarious. I have a coffee mug from Clubhouse too that I pulled together a bunch of things. I have a bunch of old and I have a bunch of software antiques, which are just like screenshots. I should NFT them, but they are all. I'm joking. They're all screenshots of when I was. So when I started Clubhouse Combos, that whole thing, it was because I was doing a blog when I was on Clubhouse. The whole thing that was going through there, Clubhouse was crazy because it was just listening to people, and it was just so much more intimate being in the, just like Reddit Talk. You figured that out. Like it was a different experience, a more interactive, engaging experience, and the people that were on there were interesting for the most part for a while at the beginning, for about a year, but they they were all talking about how you had to find your in order to kind of survive as a creator, because a lot of these people were big on different places and were building up their clubhouse, and were saying how you do it is essentially stick to what you know, stick to, be authentic, all that kind of stuff, but stick to something that you can continuously talk about, and that you can do that. And so at first I was like, okay, well, I've been a writer for forever. I've done all this stuff. Like I talk about myself, just kind of like Taylor Swift. I can just talk about myself and get through things. That's how a lot of people do that. Where you can throw in whatever you want of anything else, but the human experience ultimately is what makes people kind of connect to you. And I was looking through the like when I was figuring out what I could write, I started the Clubhouse Conversations as a Substack newsletter, because they were all selling Substack too. It was all these VC people that were like getting people to follow them, that all wanted to be cool to rich people and famous people. So like they were all just saying what they heard from those people and doing what they were told, like being sheeple in a cult. And it was so I was that was where the Board Ape Yacht Club even started off, where they just had all these people that were, and they all shifted to a minute to Green Room, and then went right back to Clubhouse, and now they're all kind of spread out on Spaces and Instagram and TikTok at this point. But TikTok
So you're
TikTok
saying that we have social audio to thank for those Nazi NFTs.
yeah.
I'm sorry. That you see now. I know earlier I started this conversation with saying like Temple is not a Nazi. I don't call people Nazis. Look, do your research, people. Anyone who's future listeners for this, on the Board Ape Yacht Club. That's all I'm gonna say. Just there's some questionable stuff with the Board Ape Yacht Club. That's all I'm gonna say.
Well, mixed in when you get into all that stuff, when you watch any like kind of thing like a celebrity biopic or anything like that, or read their biographies, you'll always even listen to rap music. You'll hear them talk about the game and all the people, like how that all works out, and like Clubhouse was the best way to kind of see that. That's why I love Reddit Talk, is that it was kind of that, but not really. It was the D-list version of it, I guess, but like it was the moderators versus the celebrities.
Well, I wouldn't even say versus, because the moderators, the ones who wanted to be our Reddit talk, were cloud chasers, or like for lack of a better way of putting it, fart sniffers themselves. They and I say that like it sounds worse than I really mean it, because like I actually had a favorable view of moderators who actually tried to use Reddit Talk and tried to like leverage that platform and that product, versus the majority which didn't, and were very like had a lot of antipathy toward it, unfortunately. Um, but yeah, I mean, they weren't like versus the celebrities. They were, I guess, they are versus other platforms. So celebrities are other platforms. They are versus like the Mario's. Like I don't know if you know Mario Noah, whatever the hell his name is. The like most one of the most popular Twitter Space hosts right now. But they were like versus that kind of guy. But they were not versus like the whatever his name is, Cat Dad, or whoever they could get onto like the Lord of the Rings, or the Rings of Power cast, like those people who they could actually get to show up in Reddit talk rooms. They were happy to have them. But I get what you mean. Yeah.
I didn't mean versus like as if they were like opposed to them. I meant that like
Oh yeah,
the
yeah.
people that were following the Reddit talk community were more going for the mod power, versus the on Clubhouse and even Spaces. You get to see it where it's like the legit, like I don't know, the Game of Thrones, the actual one where they're all like following the power wherever they can, Silicon Valley, Hollywood, New York, wherever it
Yeah, yeah.
is, the
We're
major
all
hubs.
just like clawing at each other, trying to get the crown, or trying to get our sliver of like our little fiefdom. That is the one. That is another reason probably why I'm not as successful right now as I would like to be. It's just that I don't have it in me to do all that. I don't have the personality for it. I'm too kind of sincere. It's just like such a self-flattering, like the reason why I'm not successful is I'm a good person. But like it's kind of true. uh, but like you have to have. And I mean, someone once told me this, so like this for what it's worth. And this is a guy who like didn't like me, and I didn't like him, and I don't like him, and we actually like really don't like each other now, because he kind of was one of the reasons why not kind of he was like one of the reasons why I left Red. I think I told you about this guy, but like
Yeah.
one of the things that he said to me was, "You don't have the sort of sociopathic, um, sales mentality to succeed in the area that you want to succeed in. You're not going to, saying this to me, you're not going to be, you know, this clout chasing, micro celebrity, because those people are, like the people, the Lannisters in Game of Thrones. They just don't care. They will cozy up to power and celebrity and wealth or whatever else, and they usually have a bit of their own to start. Um, a bit, to varying degrees, but even like, a few $1,000s in the bank account is more than I have right now. And then they will do whatever they can to burnish their own reputation and stab people in the back behind the scenes as they need to. You don't have that. You're not going to succeed in that. You don't have it. You're not that guy, right? And like I think, I hate to admit it more and more, he's kind of right. I think there's still a line where you can like thread the needle and not be a terrible person, but a lot of the people who succeed to varying degrees are not good people. So anyway.
That is true. So this is how this whole thing formed with Clubhouse Conversations. I realized that everybody was having these like very public conversations. There were some crazy things that were going on there, and they were just doing it out in public. So I started recording a bunch of them. I started putting a bunch of them out on YouTube. I started writing reviews of them as if they were shows, like podcasts, and actually like fully critiquing them and spreading the news throughout them and what was going on within that community. And I ended up building a community based off of that. I got a bunch of people's emails. I got a bunch of people connected with a bunch of people. Um, Made a bunch of connections through all of that. But then I eventually, when Clubhouse died, and it started to, even social audio in general, like through the summer of 2021, I just was so just done with even listening to it. I was basically running Gawker for social audio is the best way I could describe it, or just Jared or whatever's doing it now, Perez Hilton, that whole line of gossip rags for the social audio crowd. And it was interesting too because everyone that got what I was doing got it. Like if you understood the inside baseball of what was happening, like they totally got it, and I did a really good job with it because I understood a lot more than like the average person that would have done that would have focused in like on crypto entirely. Like there's a whole, I mean that's what people do. There's just that crypto Twitter is their beat. It used to be crypto Clubhouse, but now it's crypto Twitter, and yeah,
I think Twitter Spaces basically like hoovered up it, to the extent that Twitter Spaces and Clubhouse compete, and whoever is winning, blah blah blah. Twitter definitely, I think, just hoovered up a lot of the crypto
100%
ecos
because the
yeah
Twitter
ecosystem.
followers mean more than Clubhouse followers for now. And unless something like catastrophic happens to Twitter, like the readership actually matters or the follower count matters. On that note, I
Easier
kind
to
of
monetize. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
it feels like Reddit is like super like still used a lot based on the numbers and everything, but I of the people who are using it because I got that year end wrap up last month, and it said I was in like the top. I think it's a top 1 or 0.1. I don't remember the hell it was percent of engagement for last year, of like something that I had done. I don't remember exactly what it
Cost or
was.
whatever.
No. It was just across. Like, it was like likes or comments or something like that of like posts I
Oh, your
engaged
your
with.
entire Reddit
Yeah, yeah,
profile.
yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. When it was going through the whole year end wrap up.
Reddit recap.
Yeah, yeah.
Now, of course, there's this Reddit.
And I don't
We
go on
both
there that
experienced this
much.
with.
Is the funny thing
But yeah,
about it.
the way Reddit does their numbers, grain of salt is all to say. Grain of salt with all the things that they talk about with their numbers and what they tell us versus what they tell other people. But sorry, go on.
Yeah, it was just surprising to me when I was looking at that. I was just thinking about like, I mean, Twitter definitely has more users. Like Reddit is basically it doesn't look like it's as dead as Clubhouse, but it basically is a text version of Clubhouse, or Clubhouse is an audio Reddit
Oh
almost. Is the
well, no, I mean
best.
it's a forum app. Like it always has been and always will be. Whenever they try to like pivot into other products, like to varying degrees, they can be successful. They had some success with RPAN doing streaming. They had some success with Talks doing social audio. But at the end of the day, their bread and butter is the forum capability, the message board component. That is what they are known for. They will always be that. And I think to some extent, it's the fact that those things don't jive as well with the other components. Like this is going to be the weirdest thing to say. I didn't think I was going to say it. I don't want to say it, but I think I have to. Twitter might be the best. the big strength of Spaces might be that they integrated social audio into their platform better than any other social media company. And I hate to say that because I don't particularly like Spaces. I don't particularly like the whole thing that Twitter tries to do sometimes, and has tried to do more cringely in the past of like just copying other companies' products and services, rather than like leaning into being themselves. Reddit, I think, actually is a lot better about like not forgetting who they are. Don't forget where you came from. Like leaning into who they are in spite of occasionally pivoting to other things or allowing others to do other things. But like, yeah, Spaces just it doesn't always work. It's buggy and it has problems, but I think they just integrated it more well in the long run. It doesn't feel as incongruous. The user base that uses it like seems to like it, whereas I think the user base that liked talks, they liked it too, but they just felt like they got drowned out by the vast majority of Reddit that was indifferent to it or was actively hostile to it.
Interesting. On on Twitter, it was very easy. I met a lot of. Uh, we'll say Green Room actually was the place where it was the most fun for a second. That's the summer of Green Room, is what I call that. It was like the 3 months where like Spotify Live now what it is was popular for a minute, and what happened was I sat in there for a while and I met a bunch of refugees from other social audio platforms that people who would get in some kind of a fight and then get banned from that platform, from stereo, from spaces. There was one whole group that came from Twitter, but it wasn't Vine, Periscope. They were Periscope refugees, what they called themselves. And there was a whole group meeting that they did ever since Periscope went down. They started using Twitter Spaces for their community, and they have all this like gossip about each other, and they're all like these. It's like a reality show happening within the social audio community, basically from the Periscope crowd within Twitter, and yeah, knowing those little microcosms and understanding that, like for example, on YouTube, just this is where a lot of my references start to get really outdated is because I do watch some YouTube, don't get me wrong, and I do try to keep up with like the general zeitgeist of what's going on. But like mostly when I'm watching something that's not the news, I'm watching like Netflix or Hulu or something like that, or some equivalent of that. Like I've got HBO, I've had for free for. I'm never changing my AT&T plan. I don't know how long I've had that now. I've gotten so used to it. I'm just grandfathered into it. I'm never changing it. But I usually will watch like produced things, and so I understand like the Game of Thrones kind of things. But when it gets to the YouTube culture, I remember Phil DeFranco was one of the first YouTubers I really started to pay attention to when YouTube shifted from like, hey, there's these cool viral videos to like, hey, we should just watch these people's channels and see what they have to say as they vlog about their lives, and like the Jake and Pauls and all of those people rose up. And it was I know of the high levels of those kind of things, like Mr. Beast. I know exactly who he is. I've never watched any of his shit ever. I know who Jake Paul is. And Logan Paul. I know who they are. But I did just watch the Paul cast because they had Triple H on it. And I've been following this whole thread with WWE and Vince McMahon. But yeah, for the most part, when it comes to like Twitch streamers and TikTokers, especially when someone's like, "Hey, you don't know that?" Like, no, I don't. I do not. I do not. I do not care. I don't know their backstory, but I do through social audio. I do know a bunch of these people actually now. I do understand like the behind the scenes and the things that went with some of those other crowds and that I normally would not have paid attention to. And so I am now kind of plugged into some of those things, but I don't like pay attention to their content basically.
Yeah, you don't seek it out. It just kind of comes to you. You're the kind of guy who would probably know who Dr. Mike is, but you wouldn't necessarily know who Harley Morenstein is.
100%. And well, another part of that too is because Dr. Mike and MKBHD and what's the other guy?
I've recently heard,
Legal. They all have the same
yeah.
company that they work under, and so I would attend their
Oh,
Discord
yeah,
and
management
Spaces and all
companies.
these kind of
Yeah, yeah.
things that I would actually. So yeah, I am familiar with that level of it. Yeah. And even when I
Did you
go to
know?
like CES, I would meet my friend. I took a picture with him with Linus from Linus Tech Tips because we were just like standing there waiting at the thing. We're all, I mean, when you hang out in the press, you basically meet all those people. I got to be there for the dawn of those people, kind of the internet star or the internet, anything, influencer moving into these spaces, and I was kind of at the same time going to all those places and seeing it happen.
Right. Sorry. I was gonna say, do you kn- I have a substantive thing to say and I have a less substantive thing. I'll say a less substantive less substantive thing first. I literally was listening to like one of his like VODs, like a clip, like an extended clip from one of his like video podcasts. His name is pronounced Marquez, not Marquis, um, not Marcus, Marquez. I think it's spelled with an S, but it's pronounced with like a Z. And I was like, really? I just that threw me when I heard that. KBHC. Anyway,
Yeah, yeah.
that's the less substantive. The more substantive thing is, I assume, again, I think for those who don't know, they probably do if they're following you, but like, Brian's a journalist. You go to VidCon, you go to TwitchCon. Do you still go to those events?
I might this. I have so since COVID. I have not gone to anything since 2020 or 2019, technically the end of 2019. That CES of 2020 was the first thing that I missed, and then I went virtual to all the rest of the things, and I so this and it's
Oh, right,
only
right. A lot of them
because
went virtual.
yeah, this past holiday season, I picked up a client, started working with an agency. So I've been doing it for the client to get him into a bunch of things like that, and then I've been doing it for the agency too to kind of like, while I stay home, at least let them go like see what it's like to get behind closed doors and free passes to things and all that kind of stuff. Just sending them off on those things, but I myself probably maybe this summer, but next CES I kind of want to go to, but beyond that, I'm maybe next year, 2024. I'll be comfortable getting up and traveling more.
Wow. Okay. Fair. I mean, each their own. Um, I Did you go? Okay, so it's sideline to the virtual thing, and I guess just we're all kinds of digressions, and I don't even know where we are, but like as far as the virtual thing
We're
goes,
still
I
in the
didn't go to
creator
any.
economy in some way.
No, yeah, yeah. As far as the virtual thing goes, I never went to any of these. At least I can't remember going to any like virtual cons of note. I mean, what's it like? Did you go to like DC Fandom? Did you get like NFTs and like what kind of what's it like going to a virtual con?
To the
Actually, like
to
as
the
a
live events or the virtual ones? What do you mean?
no, yeah, to a
Oh,
virtual
when you're doing.
version of a convention. Like,
Oh, dude, it's stupid. It's just a Zoom call. It's what we're doing right now. It's just somebody like you log in and
so
there's like
it's like
20
watching
people.
the
Yeah,
Apple presentation.
yeah, everything
Okay.
got pulled down into. I mean, there's still emails that come. They're being on the email list for things like that. Like South by Southwest, for example, is the next big thing that's I'm getting a bunch of emails for. Like the end of last year, it's all towards CES because like everybody's at CES. That's like the biggest event in Las Vegas and the biggest conference in the world. And from there, the South by Southwest in March is like the big thing that everybody like within the all of the different worlds, like the tech, crypto, finance, all these kind of things, mixed in with movies and music and all that, games, all those kind of things. It's like the kind of big mixed festival conference, um, and then the summer used to be E3, but E3 kind of I don't know. Video games is basically people and the streaming stuff at Twitch and I don't. Is it, YouTube is took over VidCon back. If I last read that right. I don't know. I could be behind on that again, but like TikTok had initially been like the
You mean
headline
like
sponsor of VidCon, and now it's
oh,
YouTube
sponsor?
again.
Okay.
Yeah, but even on like E3, I remember over in the 2010s when essentially it started off where in the press room you'd be there with a lot of the Twitch streamers and the YouTubers because like they were just all group like by themselves. There was even like teams or individuals didn't really make a difference, but they were just all it was like all independent journalists were kind of mixed in there with them. And they inevitably Twitch started paying for like a booth and then doing their show there, and YouTube did the same thing. And then you got to watch. This is why I love going to these conferences. By the way, you get to watch them start spending more and more money to like make a bigger booth, like Twitch and YouTube, so you can like see them live streaming from their sets. They're
Mm.
actually like facing off. You don't notice this when you watch them on the things, but they're actually like very close to each other some of these years, and they're both like recording things and having guests on and streamers started being more they started taking the Twitch streamers more seriously around like 2014 and up, where they
Hmm.
would like start, presenting them as celebrities versus presenting them as journalists, which is like two different kind of. You get the same pass, you go behind the same kind of things, but it's talent versus press. Basically, there's a couple places where only the talent goes, and the talent's usually being paid to be there is the other part of it, because the reason that the difference between journalists and influencers is journalists will like have to disclose everything. Even if someone says you can't even touch it,
Ostensibly,
or
yeah,
yeah, if you
yeah.
get it early, you have to explain how this all happened, and then you and I have Hollywood's like very centralized too. I've got like access to some of these things where I get my watermark, my name on early access to pretty much anything on anywhere. It's kind of crazy to get into the reviewer side of that part of it. But it's different doing that and being unknown versus like being like Tom Hanks, basically. And even though like you may have the
Yes.
same knowledge, Tom Hanks is also a brand to himself, and that's what the
Hmm.
influencers started going to. They started taking sponsorships that they would take $1 million and more, multi-million-dollar sponsorships that journalists could not take. There's all sorts of things where like the boundaries got tested by PR marketing agencies until they figured it out. Now, if you look at any established company, you'll see that they have influencer marketing and sponsorships inquiries on one email, and then in another email is for press and media inquiries. So like there will be people that mix together, where there's like the Young Turks, for example. I'm sure is still like native to YouTube in some way, and they 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 still like, I don't know. It's the same thing. They have to deal with the same shit. They have to deal with the same business, the same market, and there's a bunch of people that are suing Google now for a bunch, like the New York Times, all those kind of places. I don't know if New York Times is among them, but all the top tier media outlets that are now suing both Meta and Alphabet, uh, respectively, in different countries and in the U.S. about antitrust, basically, because they people don't read the whole article; they just read the headlines. And if the ads are all in the headlines, and these people can't get any, like, if they're just sharing the HuffPost article or the BuzzFeed thing and no one's taking it, then you can't get any ad revenue. And the funny thing is that that's why BuzzFeed is trying its hardest to use all of its data that it can get from paying to sponsor. Actually, I believe if you remember the first viral kind of Facebook Live thing that they did, the video thing, one of them, the one that went big as I remember at least, outside of Facebook, was the BuzzFeed. They wrapped the rubber bands around the watermelon until it exploded, and they lost. They couldn't even count. I went back and watched that video later to see like if they ever. I saw it in the beginning, and then I just didn't pay attention and went back. But they got paid like $2 million or some shit like that. Or to them, the New York Times and HuffPost, before they were BuzzFeed, they all had different deals to, and they still do, to make content on Facebook. And it's because Facebook has more ad content, and then Google at the same time was pulling everything onto their servers, and they all control everything. So they're getting kind of sued, just like the AI people are, to by the content creators, the biggest ones, the in order to kind of get more money back and try to save journalism, because they had to cut off like BuzzFeed cut off 12% of their staff, and then all of a sudden now they're using AI, and they're trying to use the AI to make quizzes, because even if you're, this is how BuzzFeed grew in the first place, was through Facebook and all these social media things, is that if your friend shares something that says like, I'm Hermione, which Harry Potter character are you? Then you click on that and you take that quiz. And then if they can have an AI make a quiz for every single one of those things, I thought about doing it before manually, and it's kind of a pain in the ass to write those quizzes, but to do it, to like kind of game the system
Yeah,
like a
using
class site.
ChatGPT specifically, but
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yeah,
But
we go on.
yeah, I was saying if you use it with ChatGPT, you could. That's what they're gonna. Well, not ChatGPT specifically. They're doing their own kind of version of it, but like that's really what they're going
Oh,
after.
the headline said ChatGPT, but I guess yeah, I guess doing
Yeah, they're
a
trying to
ChatGPT
generate it
clone.
based off
Yeah,
of the data that they pay Facebook back. Basically, Facebook pays them, and they pay Facebook back to get the data of like what you like and what is gonna appeal to you, what's going to be popular, and they all use these algorithms to like all this automation to get that thing in front of your face, just so that they know that you like, that we're talking about Game of Thrones on here, and then it's going to just be like, which Game of Thrones house are you? And
yeah, yeah,
like that kind of thing, and just keep generating a new one each time, so that like everyone gets their own unique thing, and it's all going to be like it gives people a reason to leave Facebook and go to BuzzFeed so that BuzzFeed can make more money at the end of the day versus the New York Times where they're stuck in a deal where even if they do, and HuffPost used to have HuffPost Live. We were talking about that before. And what they did when they killed it was they moved it over to Facebook, and it could still be going on for all I know. I just don't pay attention, but that is what HuffPost Live was, and they got paid by Meta to do that, and that
Right.
is not helping them get the viewership over back into the BuzzFeed group. Or neither Complex can't do it either because they're syndicating it out to like First We Feast or whatever. Let's say how many times we can, how many different ways we can input fucking
Oh
chicken
God.
wings into a goddamn
Yeah,
show.
yeah, yeah,
But,
yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
but
That's a
yeah,
whole
but
other.
of
Yeah,
all
don't
that
get me started on that.
BuzzFeed, those quizzes
Yeah.
are probably be the most like traffic driven thing to get it back. And I'd rather that they
Ironically,
do it that than make humans do it for free. Basically, like I'd rather they
so we're we're
exploit
we're
AI.
we're pretty close to the titular subject. Also, by the way, speaking of things where we're at or not, we're a little long on the tooth as far as timeline goes. I'm pretty good on time, and I know you are on time.
I'm good
Just want
right
to
now.
put that out there.
I'm good with
Okay,
it.
cool. But
I'm gonna put this raw online, by the way. I'm not gonna edit this. This is too much trouble. I don't want to have to do this after. As soon as we're done, I'm gonna immediately like flip this over and upload it to that other channel, to the right channel.
Gordon Ramsay,
I'm
it's
not
fucking
editing that.
raw.
Yeah, this is what it
It's
was
fucking
meant to be.
raw.
So like, this is just what it's gonna fucking be. But
The
like,
video is
we
raw.
could
It's
definitely be a lot more
cold.
professional when we bring people on to actually talk that are actually
Well, that's the other thing. I was
gonna.
thinking like if we have guests, right? They're gonna have like like we're just like
This
two
is
assholes
getting to
who don't
know
have
us.
lives. They're gonna have like schedules and stuff that like they're probably gonna have hard outs. So like if we have thing that says like it's supposed to run for an hour, they're probably gonna say like okay it's been an hour and like yeah sorry so good have a good time like we'll probably have to
They
like let
both
them
also
go.
know that I talk way too much, so they know that they're like, I'm gonna keep going until you shut the fuck up or shut me up or say you gotta
Yes,
go.
yes, yes. Yeah, exactly. I'll probably be the time guy. I'll probably like try to keep you honest as far as like, okay, so we respect you. Thank you for thank you for coming here. We want to be respectful of your time. Da, da, da. But anyway, so we're pretty close with the titular subject, with ChatGPT and BuzzFeed. I was going to just say as an interjection, because I think it is relevant. Uh, there's something that the whole discourse around the Crowder thing. You familiar with Louder with Crowder, Steven
Yeah,
Crowder,
yeah.
and that whole thing with Daily Wire. You familiar with that?
I'm familiar with the company and the guy. I am not familiar with what they're
So
going for right
there's
now.
a yeah. So there's a controversy of sorts. Basically, Daily Wire made an offer to have Steven Crowder come on as a paid employee with a contract, a multi like I think it was I the number that keeps being putting out there is a $50 million contract
Oh
for I
wow,
think it was 4 or 5 years. I think it was 4 years. $50 million contract for 4 years
they get paid
to
like
be a contributor.
athletes. It's funny.
Right, that's a comparison someone else was making. Like Luke Thomas, you probably don't know who that is, but he's an MMA journalist. He has his own YouTube channel, and this and that. But he was talking about like he made a lot of sense when he was talking about it. Um, as have others, and like people have already picked sides. Some people are on Crowder side, some people are on Daily Wire side. I don't want to pick sides. I want to just like part of my whole thing as part of like as a sense maker and on the internet is just like trying to find out what the actual facts of the situation are and then interpret from those facts. I'm not particularly wedded to either like it's too conservative media of outlets or personalities. Like I'm not exactly like I don't have a dog in this fight. And I'm not here to like just like eat popcorn and be happy that they're fighting at all. But like my understanding of it basically is Crowder um, Crowder doesn't feel that he needs that money, and he felt that the terms of the deal were too onerous. Now, again, it's a lot to unpack, and I'm not going to try to like properly unpack it right now. So I'm just going to do a TLDR that might be some like oversimplistic and biased, but my understanding from multiple people I've talked to and multiple things I've read and heard is the terms of the deal are not so much onerous as just terms of a deal. In the same way that actors and again athletes and music artists will get $50 million contracts, but there are terms of those contracts, and if you run afoul of those terms, you may not get the money, or you may not get the full money, or you may even have to like the company may be able to claw back the money that they already paid you, kind of thing. and he didn't want that. But the thing is, what is the alternative? Like, firstly, why does he feel comfortable turning down $50 million? Just you could say like, oh my god, it's all about the money and this and that, your principles, ethics. Okay, fine. But like, why does he feel comfortable turning down $50 million? Is a real legitimate question someone can ask. Obviously, presumably, he's doing okay now. Whatever funding streams, whatever he has, he is like not in the poorhouse. It's why they came to him in the first place. He is profitable, quote unquote, now, um, and successful in his own way now. Why does he feel comfortable turning down $50 million? And also, what kind of deal does he want? And this is the thing. I don't know why my voice just went up there. Want, but this is the thing. Uh, if he doesn't want that deal, what kind of deals he want, and why can he? The answer to that question, as Luke and others I think have sort of sussed out, is kind of mutually inclusive. It all kind of comes back to this one thing. What he may or may not have currently in terms of his income stream is a benefactor relationship. There may be someone who is bankrolling him, or a group of someone who are bankrolling him. I mean, certainly, I think he has a Patreon. He has like probably not Patreon because like you might have gotten banned from that, but he has like some kind of direct like funding from his followers to him stream. But there may also be like a big money guy or series of guys behind the scenes who are also kind of subsidizing his uh, enterprise. That is the kind of deal that he wants. He doesn't want a deal where he's a paid employee and he has to kind of deal with the strictures of like this or that and TOS and whatnot. He wants basically a deal where someone will give him a big bag of money and just kind of let him do his thing. And probably there'd be some deliverables, but there would not be like this thing where they can put conditions on it or claw it back or terminate it. And at the end of the day, the question is, okay, but is that like a fair deal on the other side? And like, who gets those kind of deals at all? Right. And so I think there's this thing of like, basically, the dirty secret of a lot of our economy and a lot of our entertainment industry and a lot of this, creator economy stuff, everything from Dubai, the pretty blonde, blue-eyed Dubai DJs, right, and YouTubers and Twitch streamers and anything else is if it doesn't make dollars, it doesn't make sense. And if you can't perceive, if you can't understand, if the average person looking at it, and even like the more than the average person, like trying to understand the financials, can't make sense of it from the outside in, it's probably because there's a benefactor somewhere involved who's subsidizing what is actually not an objectively profitable business model, or at least a risky business model. And so that is the kind of dirty secret of a lot of this stuff. It's like if you wonder why like this use the example because this is an archetype, this is a thing, why this girl can go flying all over the world essentially doing nothing, or maybe like doing fitness pictures or videos, or being a DJ, quote unquote, um, that probably like doesn't actually like do anything meaningful with like in terms of music. It's because there's a benefactor somewhere funding it, and that's the thing with Crowder. It's like there's probably a benefactor somewhere funding him,
There
and that's
has
what
to
he
be.
wants,
There has
and
to
that's what
be
he
in order
wants.
to get to that level because, I mean, the archetype of a starving artist is also a very real one. And anybody trying to as you know, trying to build
Yeah.
something as a creator from nothing, like it takes money at the beginning. It takes a lot of there's a lot of ways that they luck,
Yes, there's a
luck
lot
and
of like
timing,
different
all
ways to
sorts of
do it,
other
but
stuff
like
like that. But at the same time, yeah, he definitely has somebody that's funding him at that point to have the time that he does to be able to do nothing but that.
exactly. And so bring it back to BuzzFeed, right? Ironically, and this is I don't say this is a good thing. I just say this is a statement of fact. Perhaps one could argue, if nothing else, BuzzFeed has been able to do everything that they have been able to do, gotten to the point where, as you point out to me, they literally bought HuffPost, which blew my mind when you told me that. Um, like, essentially, for better or worse, they have a profitable business model. They make money. And if that means that they will use AI to do their like shitty, like non-journalism journalism, like listicle articles and quizzes and this and that, um, if they will be as like sort of mercenary and profit driven as possible, that will be what they do, and they will continue to make money because at the end of the day, if it doesn't make dollars, it doesn't make sense. And so I think circling back to AI and BuzzFeed and the creator economy, it's like people have to figure out the line. They have to figure out like what their level of comfort and what their level of profitability and whatever in this system. You can either say like you can either be honest with yourself and say like I do a thing that is not explicitly objectively profitable, monetizable, etc., but I think there's value in it. I would like people to subsidize it, whether that is probably big money in specific individuals to start and then a collection of individuals including fans as you grow, or you can say I'm going to do something that makes money and it's going to be extremely um, mercenary in pursuit of that, and the quality may suffer. But at the end of the day, I would rather be profitable than beholden to a business. Not beholden to. I'd rather be profitable than have to like seek a sugar daddy, basically, because that's kind of the duality. You can't like necessarily be um, kind of work that doesn't make money and also not have a sugar daddy, basically.
This is
Sorry,
why I actually
that was a long rant, but yeah,
I trust comedians more than I do journalists for this exact reason. Because don't get me wrong, I know a ton of journalists. I also know a bunch of comedians too. But the sorry, I just feel pretentious as I say that. I just as I heard myself saying, I just thought like, oh god, you just sound like a dick. But like
it's fine, dude. I get what you're saying. Go on.
they're it's just the same reason that I like YouTubers. Like you understand who their sugar daddy is because they're putting it on the screen. They're stopping and they're talking about it for like BetterHelp.com. If you want more, blah blah blah. Go to this and that. Like you cannot get Ridge Wallet. All these brands that I would never have known if it wasn't for them reading all these things. And so, like, at least I
Established
understand.
titles. Oh god,
You don't
go on.
see like Bill Clinton, for example, like coming up on the stage. He didn't get elected, going like, "Well, this was funded by George Soros," and then the other person like, "Well, David Koch or Charles Koch," and I'm probably getting the wrong side. I don't know enough about the like. I don't watch
Oh
the
no,
soap operas as well.
you're right. You're right. You got
But
the numbers right or the names right.
that basic idea of like if they were just going in there and saying who their puppets were, then like it would be a whole different thing versus like a YouTuber who at least like is honest and a comedian. They're honest. Like they're not telling the truth, but then again, neither is the news.
There's more transparency in podcast ads than in political ads. I think that is one way of putting it. Or podcast enterprise than political campaigns and the political machine. Absolutely. And also there's the fact that frankly, the benefactors, the sugar daddies or whatever, they don't want to be known, right? Like the advertiser, like Me Undies absolutely wants you to know their name. George Soros and the Koch bros don't want you to know their name. So that's the other
That was another
thing
product
there.
of Occupy, by the way. An underrated one of that era was that like they were put there like whether they wanted to or not. Those billionaires were like their names were blasted
Right.
everywhere. Like
Well,
they
the
were
other thing
made
is like
famous.
the other thing is like they're opposing sides, and like the dirty secret of their existence and their subsidizing of the opposition is something that would in itself be interesting and get clicks. So of course, at a certain point, conservatives, including the Kochs, wanted known that George Soros is funding opposition and vice versa. I think all that stuff is pretty shitty on both sides. I hate to say both sides because like that's the whole thing. Like, oh, both sides, but it's true. Like it's pretty shitty on both sides. And like at the end of the day, I'm gonna start composing a tweet because I really think I hit on something. Not to suck my own dick too much, but like I really like the idea of hitting on at the end of the day. Like I said earlier, you either do the kind of work that is inherently profitable, if not necessarily the platonic ideal, let's say, of what you would want to do as a job or what other people would want to see succeed in the marketplace, quote unquote, or you understand at some level that you need a sugar daddy. So you're either like doing something profitable or you're taking on a sugar daddy. There's kind of there is an in between, but it's harder to find, and that is the thing. It's like we talked about this. You and I talked about this kind of behind the scenes as well. It's like a lot of activism is subsidized. Right, like it's not to say that everybody who was doing Occupy was getting, Soros bucks, but it is a thing that
People
if you're
within
wondering,
Occupy and Anonymous and BLM and all of
well,
those things from the days, like
if
they all got funding. That's how a lot of that crowdfunding came up. That's how a lot of
some of it for
things like
sure.
that came up.
Yeah, some of it, sure. But like I was gonna say, make it more concrete and because a lot of people also just like word like not like they were people experiencing homelessness is the proper term, but I would just say they were homeless. I knew some of them. I didn't
There was a
partake in
bunch
that
that were
myself, but
not. You're 100% right. I was one that did not make that money. I mean,
yeah, yeah, exactly, exactly,
I
yeah.
did make some money off it. I won't say that I never made anything, but I definitely did not make a living wage. I made like a
No,
thousand
no,
dollars a
yeah, for
year
sure.
maybe off of that by that whole time.
But yeah,
Before I had
this
to
is
like
it was
dive into journalism and be someone's like make someone my
yeah.
daddy, I guess.
Well,
The
that's the yeah.
version of
I
that.
mean,
Yeah.
it's a complicated. It's like many things. It's a complicated soup, and I often say things are more complicated. Whenever someone tries to tell you something, tries to give you an easy answer, tries to tell you something as simple, like it's probably not correct. Like most things are multifactorial. But the point I'm getting at is like if you're on Twitter, going back to Twitter for example, and you're wondering like how is it that this like Alejandra, whatever the hell, like who like recently got kind of uh got the riot act read to her, I would say appropriately, I think on the Senate floor in Congress, um uh and all these other like sort of professional actors, how do they exist, how do they make money, how do they feed themselves, how do they clothe themselves, like why are they getting all this gloss? It's because, if not Soros specifically, because there's other people, it's because there's like a big money guy or entity, packed whatever behind the scenes that wants to see that work done. Like like I told you, like I can speak to that. Like if I could be a whistleblower on anything, it's not really a whistleblower, but it's like a statement of fact, and it's an open secret. Like I was part of a sort of like professional, like activist nonprofit thing back in 2000, like it was like 14 or 15, and they paid for me to go, like get on a plane and go to the capital, like not DC, it's capital of the state that I was in, but still like they put me up at a hotel and we went and we did politicking and we like knocked on like the doors of politicians, usually talking to their assistants, but still like we were doing all that. It's like it was funded by someone, like, and like I got a stipend. And so like again, whenever you're looking at these things, it's important to consider like, okay, like what is the thing behind the thing? So swinging back to BuzzFeed and AI, what do you think, Brian? What do you think is like? Because we both, I think, are of the same mind that like BuzzFeed and listicles and all that. Sure, you can like get AI to do that, and that's one thing. But I, mused, not pontificated, but mused on Twitter that like when this news came out, BuzzFeed's or sorry, ChatGPT and other AI, they're not going to be able to replicate what the kind of thing that I do. Now, granted, the kind of thing that I do doesn't make money at this point. So again, I need some kind of like sugar daddy myself. I need to be like putting myself out there like Stephen Crowder, like I want a sugar daddy, but like what I do can't be replicated by AI. What you do can't really be replicated by AI necessarily. But what do you think is the future as far as like AI being sort of um, inserted into the creator economy in this way, where like, or just into like media and entertainment in general in this way, where like a major corporation that, let's say, didn't need to like do this, but certainly has a business model that is inclined to do this, is going to start like using AI to like literally make its articles, like not even like as a secret, like as an open statement, they're going to do it. What do you think is like the future when BuzzFeed is using AI and like AI is becoming like this sort of outsized component of the creator economy? That's a kind of a broad question, but
So I have two questions to ask before I get into this. First off, are you familiar with CNET's version of this too?
You mentioned it again. I keep saying behind this. So this would be like what's the clubhouse phrase? The
Back
back
channel.
channel. We keep talking about the back channel. I keep talking about the back channel. Brian and I are friends. We do talk behind the scenes. We don't just that's the sort of like, that is like the very obvious like behind the scenes thing. It's like we actually talk when we're not on camera. That's like the joke like going back to like I think the 90s and the 2000s like wait, you guys talk when you're not on camera? Yes, we talk when we're not on camera. Like that's just a revolutionary thought back then. Um, but yeah, you mentioned to me like CNET has a version of this of their own. I was not familiar with it. Wouldn't surprise me. I'd like to think that CNET is a little more respectable and like has a little bit higher quality in terms of their like journalism than BuzzFeed. Like BuzzFeed Maine at least. I know BuzzFeed the
That was going to
the
be my second question. Actually, you're already getting into that. As I was going to ask you what you think of CNET. That was my next
right.
follow up on
Like
that.
I I remember I told you, right, that excerpt from that one article, investigative journalistic powerhouse, BuzzFeed, like, and I was like cringing so hard and like wanting to like pull my hair out of that line of text in an article I read, which I guess we talked about it, we kind of unpacked it. Like I'm being a little unfair there. BuzzFeed News is a subset of BuzzFeed. Now it's like a separate like subdivision, its own website even. BuzzFeed News, as opposed to BuzzFeed Maine, like actually does investigative journalism. Okay, fine. I would say it's investigative journalism of the in the vein of like Taylor Lorenz and whatnot, which is not exactly the highest bar out there.
It
Let's
is
let's put it that way.
very skewed
Yes.
journalism.
Yeah. It's not the highest bar out there, but it is investigation journalism. Fair enough. Fair enough.
They had their opinion,
Um,
and they have broken
yeah,
stories. I'll give them that.
exactly. No, they objectively have. Whether or not we could debate, like how much substance has come out of it. I could say like a lot of those stories ended up
Yeah.
being nothing burgers, just looking at them. But like in hindsight, but yes, they have broken stories. My read on CNET is like, I mean, firstly, I think I could be wrong, but I think they also just have a better habit of staying in their lane. They're the tech journalistic websites. So like CNET is the kind of website that I would go to if I wanted to like get a breakdown of this year's E3 or last year's E3. CNET's the kind of website that I would go to for reviews and analysis of the new iPhone. CNET's the kind of website that I might go to if I want to figure out like what's going on at Amazon, like as Jeff is exiting the company and his replacement is like taking the reins. That's what I would look at CNET for.
Like a USA Today for tech. Is that a basic idea, or like a I don't know,
Sure.
like the
That's fair. That's fair. Like how close on? What do you think? Do you
so
think I'm right on that? Do you think I'm wrong?
I that's what I feel. What I was thinking was that I hadn't seen that I hadn't thought about them. No, they haven't been relevant to me since like I don't know the 2000s. Like I've
Oh,
seen
okay. In
them
that regard, yeah. No, I mean, like we say USA Today, like yeah, they wouldn't be my go-to.
like
Like
it's
I wouldn't
like every once
seek
in a
them out.
while like you catch
But
a
that's what I
headline
expect to
because it was
find if
big
I
enough
if
and
I
they
to
had
find their
a
articles.
and they had
Yeah,
a
yeah.
they had some type of a take and it's usually it's light but it gets me what I need and I will check it for I do still trust the reviews as much as you can trust. Like I try to read as many reviews before I actually buy something if I'm spending money on it. So like I do look at them a lot for that. But and I've seen them just like at CES for example, they have outside of all the booths, they have like a whole CNET thing there that's very present. But I also at the same time like I've never really heard people like talk about them or think of like the BuzzFeed barely is a little bit more relevant than CNET to like the younger people I feel like. But so I'll tell you what they did. They were the ones how I kind of they got into my vision recently this last month this year so far was because they got caught for using an AI writer in house and they did a pretty sneaky way about this. And what they did basically was they set up a writer account, and if you clicked on the bio, it said like CNET FinTech staff or something. I can't remember money tech staff. I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was like some thing for the name of the person. But if you clicked on him and you went to his bio page, it said that it was an artificial intelligence writer, and they in doing so, they say that they had this is where the editorial standards and where the line kind of got drawn was because it started going all over Twitter like crazy. The entire staff of The Verge was like tweeting it and writing about like crazy, promoting it. I can't remember, there was two the others that went after him pretty hard, but basically it was doing financial advice, but it was getting the math wrong. It was getting certain like plagiarizing things. There was all sorts of things that you could tell that an editor didn't actually look at it. And as soon as they figured out it was AI and it started spreading around, it just became like this huge stain. And then the only thing uh, that ended up coming out since then was BuzzFeed. It was like 2-3 days into it when I've been listening to CNET about, or listening to The Verge about CNET, was you came in with the BuzzFeed. That's when it was when you first brought that up. Said the media outlet. I was like, okay, what is this? that's what for anyone listening. That's what I in the back channels. That's what that came up for the last time, and
Oh yeah, yeah. I mentioned like, hey, there's a company that's going to officially be using AI for like a not insignificant portion of its articles and outputs, and you're like, oh, seen that? And I'm like, no, BuzzFeed.
yeah,
I kind of gave it like I used the line, investigative journalist powerhouse. Like that should have been a pretty good hint to you when I said that, but yeah.
I know, I know.
Uh,
Well, that's the thing is that I was also thinking about CNET that same way. Is that like they didn't really feel like in the circles that I've been in. If I brought up CNET, like they're more of like the Verge kind of crowd, or they're more like hacker kind of people, engineers, like those kind of things that are deep into tech. And so like to them, CNET is the same type of joke as BuzzFeed. Basically, like they really would not have like thought like why are you getting
sure.
your news from like the front of the fucking the
Oh, I
Shadow
get you.
newspaper, basically.
I guess the flip on that would be like BuzzFeed, ironically, is infamous in that regard,
Oh,
and like that's
100%.
why that's why
100%. It's
I resented. That's why I had such a strong reaction to that line, "Investigate Journalist Powerhouse." Whereas, like, if someone said like I get their news from CNET or like I like CNET or whatever, I'd be like, okay, whatever. I wouldn't, and I don't think anyone would call them. I don't think you can correct me. I don't think anyone called them an investigative journalist powerhouse. Like they break stories or this and that. Like they were pivoting to be like
yeah,
the publishers of
but
a
they're not being
Steele
called that. Yeah,
dossier or
definitely.
like saving democracy or all
Still
this
does.
bullshit. Like yeah, yeah, exactly. Well, that's the thing. They were one of the
Standing up to big tech in any way. Like you know that
yes, no, exactly.
they're
That's
shills.
the
You know who
thing.
their sugar
That's
daddy is. It's Silicon Valley.
yeah, yeah, yeah. That's the thing. BuzzFeed News was like one of the Steele dossier people, but like or outlets. But like that's the thing. Like uh, they're both. I wouldn't say they're both disreputable because again, I don't know how CNET is perceived. I don't know if it's infamous or if it's just like
Now it's trash. That's because like
okay
everybody's been dragging them on Twitter. That was like a whole
for
thing
for the
this
AI.
last
Okay,
week
so I
was
guess it is. I guess it is
because of
infamous.
the AI, which is funny because on the other side of this is what we're
Okay.
setting up is the two sides of this coin here is because BuzzFeed stock went up for the last 2 days since you told me that, and I
Oh
even
yeah, I
ended up
know.
doing a LinkedIn post about it because I was like, okay,
Yeah.
because I don't know if you're aware because initially HuffPost how that blog. There's a whole story behind how that blog ended up disappearing. That you got the 410 errors, but I still have an existence on HuffPost on different ways because since they've been sold so many times, they have so many new systems that they don't know how to fix me and get rid of me if they wanted to. But
I'm not surprised that you can find a backdoor or
yeah,
an
yeah,
archive somewhere.
they gave me God mode for Go. I had a God mode for HuffPost, so I was able to post on all sorts of stuff. but they just to circle back to all these different things and see the conversation if you listen to this whole thing makes sense if someone actually sits down for this whole 2 hours but between the cat and the queue
Yeah, exactly.
but
I will. I'm really excited to read the fan mail for whatever this is when it comes out.
HuffPost was notorious for essentially not paying any of their creators. BuzzFeed too, both of them separately before they were together. Separately, they were both known for coming to from the internet days of like these were the two big like internet mainstream media outlets. HuffPost especially. I don't know how BuzzFeed actually took them over. It blows my mind too. Well, I actually do know because they got devalued through a bunch of different things. But the essentially they harvested slave labor at the end of the day, humans that were giving them free it's the whole thing that throughout any creator artist especially know this. There's a good comic about it where they're like, hey, can you do this job for me? Like, sure. And then like, here, can you give me $1? Like, no, but I can give you exposure. And like, sure. And then he goes to pay rent with her, like, hey, your rent's due. Like, oh, do you take exposure? And the rent guy just like shuts the door in his face and he gets kicked out
Yeah,
of there.
yeah, yeah.
And
I remember that whole thing.
and
Yeah.
that's how like the it's a real thing that like I mean even on Twitter it's what you're doing is you're giving them free content and that's what we're doing on YouTube because like you talk about followers I do have followers on a YouTube I have two YouTube channels I have some followers one's in the program one's not the
Oh yeah, I
YouTube
found
partner.
it.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
sent you
yeah,
that link.
yeah, yeah. That's the one that's in the partner program. There's another one that's not, and I'll send you that one eventually. I'll send you. I've got a bunch of them. This is the third one right now that we're going to be putting this one on, and this one I'm starting from scratch, and I'm going to build it through the social channels by sharing it basically through the social channels. That's how I already got like a few followers on there, like a handful of them. But and then I'm going after some of the communities I didn't talk about. I did the same thing I did with Clubhouse because once you know the inside baseball of what's going on, like you want to go there for that resource, and we know a lot about social audio and a lot of inside things that this is going to be long term easy. But they so and then, well, here's the other thing, by the way, Shutterstock. We'll go into the art side of this too. To keep go, I'm circling around your question, and I'm kind of providing a bunch of context here. But
It's
how
all a series of digressions at this point. We're all over the map.
how they did it was they so Getty is suing because they say no AI at all. Adobe is letting you generate AI and sell the images. What Shutterstock did is they basically have the same thing that DALL-E 2 has. I mean it's DALL-E 2 on the background, but it's using Shutterstock's unwatermarked images and its data set, and it eventually will probably get a lot better based off of if you want stock images because it's looking at that. But anyway, as you're generating it, it's still the same Shutterstock, so you can generate all you want, but it all goes under the same AI account. When you go click on it, it says that it's a creator account that was created. So now every artist on Shutterstock, just like every writer on BuzzFeed, every writer on HuffPost, every writer in the internet, every podcaster, everybody are now competing with AI in this manner. And this is one use case of where we're competing with AI, where it's the Simone, if you know that movie, Al Pacino, where like the full thing is AI. There's a bunch of the VTubers. That's how it actually kind of started. They were AI VTubers, and then it started being a thing where like humans were now replicating the AI VTubers in Asia. That's how that whole thing kind of popped up. But like, as my understanding at least. But so they have everyone's pissed off about AI in different ways, and now it's kind of like where do you put your anger? Are you mad at where you should be mad at, by the way, end of the story, is BuzzFeed, is all of these other companies that are leveraging the AI that way, and but who people are mad at is the people, all of it. They're mad at anybody who's posting a picture on Reddit. They're calling like the Reddit defending AI art, and I can't remember AI art wars. I think are two of the ones. They're like 100,000 member groups, and Stable Diffusion's like I don't know, a million at this point. There's a two, I don't know. There's some huge groups at this point that are all over these things. 2 million, I want to say, on Facebook, and they were calling them on Twitter. Some of the artists that are involved in. One of the artists, by the way, wrote that comic I was describing about the paying the rent with Sarah Scribbles or whatever her name is. That's what that. She's one of the artists that's involved with this class action against Stable Diffusion, and so they're all targeting with the lawsuits the companies themselves. But really, if you think about it, anybody who's earning money on Shutterstock, I have my rankings. I'll show that eventually on some of these stock sites. Where over the last 3 months, I can show, or now 4 or 5 months, I've kind of been off of it for a while, but it's still building up in the background, and I can show kind of how that compares to how me leveraging AI to mass produce things compared and got me into the top earners basically for uh, those platforms. I was top in the top 10 or whatever, or top 5, whatever they show. They highlighted it on Adobe stock over the holiday season during Christmas, the week leading into Christmas. That whole week, I was one of the top 10 earners on Adobe, and that was using AI. So if you consider just me, one person who's busy using AI versus Shutterstock, where they're now people are you still could generate it, but you have to pay if you want to download that image that you generated, basically. But you can generate as many as you want. So we're now going in there and being free, just like Mechanical Turk, if you remember that thing or knew what it was, Amazon's thing, or it still is around, where they used to train a lot of the machine learning things. They used humans. They need humans to do things. How these AI image things work is because they have humans that are labeling everything on stock image sites, and because of that, they know what everything is pretty well, what sells well, what's good, and they can kind of weigh these things and adjust the data sets. But so now I'm competing in different ways. Where at least on a Shutterstock, I can't do anything. I cannot sell my AI generated stuff that I generate somewhere else on Midjourney, or from Midjourney on Shutterstock. By the same token, I cannot use AI knowingly without this. Both of these, this is going to be massive asterisks on both of these for artists and for writers, because like you can very much use AI within your workflow infinite different ways. We will talk about like as time goes on this channel, but uh, I would never rely just straight on like uh, AI written work and try to pass it off saying that it was me that wrote it and try to give that to CNET or BuzzFeed, or me trying to use AI to make a BuzzFeed quiz. That's not gonna. They're not gonna accept it more than likely. Even I wouldn't even try, but I don't want to give them the free labor of having to do that because it's still kind of a pain in the ass. Navigating BuzzFeed's little quiz thing. I don't know if you ever tried to make a listicle on there or a quiz on there. It's ridiculous. HuffPost was amazing. It was great. It was blog
Not them
writing I know.
specifically, but I have, done. I'm familiar with like the Screen Rant of it all, which is a similar
Oh yeah,
like
yeah. Game Rant, Screen Rant.
like
I'm
yeah,
familiar with those too.
disreputable like just journalist outlet in terms of like how they farm and generate and pay for or not
So
pay
those
for
kind of things
content.
like you can pay like $100 to some of those 150 in a range to CNET or to any of those places and get published. And the same way, so Forbes is in a
No, that's a
really
whole other thing. I know, I know. Like
yeah.
you can pay to get published. It's a whole other. It's like imagine like not getting paid, like getting paid in exposure. Now take it all the way to the opposite extreme. Like it sounds like a joke to anyone from the 20th century if you told them this. Like, yeah, there are people who pay to get published.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
not they agree to not get paid or to defer payment, they'll get paid after like advertising revenue, or like they'll get a book published and then they'll get paid off of the sales. Like literally they'll pay someone else to publish their whatever. It's
People
like
will pay to get on TV. That's what PR is. That's all. I mean,
yeah, I know.
that's what I. We'll talk about that one day too, with more detail on camera, where the difference of how I shifted into from journalism to PR. It really boils down to like I'll make at most, if I'm lucky, I'll make $1,000 for an article that actually requires like investigative journalism. I'll make closer to like 500, 800 most times for that level of writing. But the reality is, most writing that you're able to get done to be able to live, because it'll take you a week or two, a month, if you're actually doing the job really well, to get all the sources that you need, get all the information you need to actually write an article for that $1,000. And you can do like two in a month if you're lucky, and you're only making 2 grand. You're paid like a teacher, and so at the end of the day, like the best way to make money in the writing business, if you're not trying to outsource and build your own writing farm, basically to go on to game, even if you go to Fiverr or what is it called, Upwork now. If you go to those, you still have to do some low-paying work to build your reputation up enough to get like the $600 blog or $700 blog if you're lucky. But
Yeah, yeah.
you don't get to do the same level of research, the same level of time. Your brain starts to get mushed. I've done all sorts of things over the last decade, versions of different ones to see how different ones work. So what I do use AI for, there are some still a lot of people that are willing to pay like $50 to $100 for stuff that you can really use AI and massage it. Like I've definitely asked for each header, like they'll give me an outline of like header, here's the title, here's the headers, and I'll just put them one by one. Like give me 300 to 500 words on each one of these, and then 500 is what I usually go through, but it just doesn't always do it. um, and then I go and edit like a bunch of crap out because it has a bunch of redundant stuff, a bunch of stupid things. I have to edit it and put in like the right sources and things like that. But
Sure, but at the end of the day, it's like
I do
you're
you.
paying
It's a
your
mindless fucking job,
yeah,
basically,
yeah, yeah, yeah. They're
and it takes
paying
me
you
like a minute.
peanuts. Yeah, they're paying you peanuts to do what is the equivalent of like scut work. It's
Uh
not
huh.
like
Content
terribly
bullshit.
hard. Yeah, 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 it's not terribly hard. And, if you're using the AI to get you started in the same way as like, I don't know, using, I like analogies and trying to make it concrete, using like, I think trying to baking, like you're working from, okay, instead of making your own cookie dough, you buy cookie dough from the store, but it saves you time as opposed to like making your own cookie dough
It
kind of thing.
does, and I'll kind of give you a peek into this whole workflow of how this works. Is that I work for several different agencies. Through over the years, I've done a lot of different type of work, but right now I work for specifically two agencies. I won't name either one of them right now. It's just not important. But one of them is a content marketing firm. Specifically, what they focus on is charging entrepreneurs, CEOs, C-suite executives, any kind of leadership people to publish thought leadership in anywhere. They write white papers. They will get you into the Wall Street Journal, New York Times, HuffPost, Entrepreneur Forbes, Harvard Business Review. I've ghostwritten stuff for that. I am a ghostwriter for these agencies. That's how I get work, so that I don't have to like on that end. I have a steady check that'll pay my bills, and while I'm doing other things basically with my life and doing freelance journalism doesn't pay very well, and so that end of it, there's basically when you read something from anybody, Trump. I'll tell you right now, Trump is the first person I admired watching because I knew that he was talking just like we are. He was off script. He was just doing it off the fly. It was very obvious. A lot of people may seem obvious, like Obama, for example, may seem like he's like really off the cuff. MKBHD, Marquez Brownlee, very good example. Who he tells you flat out. I know I look natural. I know, but he writes
Oh, they have
out
scripts. No,
every
no, it
fucking
is.
blink, every pause,
It's
every like he is 100
every
percent
blink,
like
every pause.
following.
No, but yeah, yeah.
But
YouTubers have scripts.
that's
This
what.
is this is
Not
the
even
open
just
secret
YouTubers.
that people.
It's everybody. That's the thing that I'm
Well,
kind of
that's the
plugged
thing that
into
surprised
is
people.
the
People
for
know the
the
politicians have
C-suite
speechwriters and
level of it
whatnot,
all.
but
Yeah, yeah. Every politician,
yeah,
everybody that you ever see in public, they have somebody writing it for, and it's not even just one person
yeah.
because a lot of these places there's so many layers of things that has to go through. So like,
Oh no, of
and
course, David Letterman is a perfect
and so
example.
then depending on the publication, you've got different levels of like, for example, CNET. You could just pay $100 to get it on there. They don't care. They have such low standards. They're BuzzFeed, same thing. But they have and HuffPost. They all have like asterisks next to them because they have different ways of like, well, you're thinking of the BuzzFeed blog versus BuzzFeed News versus like the HuffPost blog versus the like trying to like trying. It's just
Yeah,
like
yeah,
the
yeah, yeah, yeah.
editorials in the newspaper. Like people still take it as news. They don't know the difference. So it's still
I
under
posted an
fucking like.
article once. I posted an article once from HuffPost to my Twitter. It's a long time ago of Jennifer Aniston describing like her life as being child, like describing her life as a child-free, public person. Like like the
Oh,
way
that couldn't
people
have
like,
come off
when
good.
are you gonna have a kid and this and that. And it's like, wait, so she has a column? No, it's an op-ed, bro. Like she's not a columnist for BuzzFeed. She just wrote an op-ed. But
Yeah.
yeah.
I had access to the same kind of shit for HuffPost, and it was funny because I used it a different way. I used it to get it to my foot in the door for things. It was a very easy way of showing beyond social proof. You could show media proof. Jake Paul, Logan Paul, whichever one was on Disney Channel, they did a thing when
I
he
think
got
they
canceled.
both were, but no, I think it was Jake. Jake is the younger brother. Jake was like, the like sweet whatever, blah blah blah. Logan, I think he primarily got famous off of like Vine when that was a
Well,
thing,
they
and then
both they
YouTube.
both got famous off of Vine initially, but what happened was that one got Logan, I
Hmm.
guess, went to no, it was the other way around. I swear. No, maybe it was Jake that was on Disney. So Jake,
I think the younger
yeah,
one
yeah,
was because the younger one basically like he's the younger brother, so it's like he'll just kind of do
yeah.
whatever.
He
Like
was
like
like it was
I,
like
I've
Aardvark or some show. I can't remember what the
yeah.
heck it was, but like but what they said when he got because he got canceled when he filmed the dead body or whatever it was something that he did back in the day where he got canceled.
Logan went to the suicide forest. So this is where it all gets complicated. Okay, so I got you. I got you. Here we go. Jake Paul, right? 19 born 1997, younger brother. He was on Disney Channel series
Bizarre,
Bizarre for
bizarre Vark.
yeah, for
I
two
was shockingly
seasons.
close on that. I've never
Yeah,
seen
yeah,
it.
yeah. For two seasons. And then it's weird. The intro to his Wikipedia article does not mention his brother. He
That's
is
funny.
yeah. You have to go like to his early life to find his yeah.
Wait, which one is
Logan.
that? We're reading Jake. That's Jake's. Jake was on.
That was Jake.
Okay.
Jake. Okay, so Logan, 1995, so 2 years older. He let me see here. YouTube,
So Jake is
Forbes,
the younger one.
podcasts. Jake is younger one, yeah. He gained a following in 2013, posting sketches on the video sharing application Vine. He registered his YouTube channel, The Apostle Logan Paul, in October of that year, 2013. Started posting regular videos following the closure of the Vine app, blah, 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 da, 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 da. And then As an actor, his work has included Wandered as for You, Bizarre Vark, so he appeared in his brother's show, as well as various YouTube exclusive movies like The Thinning and The Thinning New World Order.
Hilarious.
And obviously, YouTube boxing and blah, blah, blah.
He's
Okay,
in the
hey, well,
WWE now too.
right. Well, I mean, anybody. Oh, actually, shit. You say in the WD, he performs in the SmackDown and
Yeah,
active
yeah,
due to
no.
injury.
He's like legit on there.
I,
People are like respecting him on there. He's actually pretty good, to be fair to him, actually too.
right,
But
because like celebrities appear on WWE, but they're not actually like signed wrestlers.
no,
He's
no,
actually
he's
oh, you say he's a
yeah,
signed wrestler.
yeah.
Yeah, gotcha,
Bad
gotcha.
Bunny
Okay.
was the last one who was actually like who took it seriously and became like a super wrestler kind of guy that everyone
Oh
was
God.
surprised about. But usually, like a bunch of them
Oh,
appear.
sorry. Bad. Sorry. Bad. Sorry. I get those confused
No, no,
sometimes.
no, not Bad Baby
Bad.
Barbie or whatever the
Yeah,
fuck.
yeah.
No,
You
no,
knew
no,
where I
no,
was
no,
going
no,
with
no,
that.
no,
Yeah,
no,
yeah.
no, no, no.
Bad Bunny. Yeah, yeah.
Bad Bunny.
The rapper. The rapper.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Sorry. Go on. Go
No,
on.
trust me, I did that a few times too. But
Okay. So how do we get into Logan Paul and Jake
so
Paul?
both are good examples, Disney and WWE, because what it is that when initially when one of them when Jake got kicked off of Disney Channel, there was a bunch of articles that came out explaining who he was and to the mainstream media, and he got more famous. And one of them was pointing out that essentially he has more viewers. Like he had like I don't even remember what it was, like 50 to 80 million at the time uh, subscribers to his YouTube, and he had his average thing was getting like 100 million views at the time, versus that show Blizzard Vark whatever was only getting like 1.2 million viewers every show, every episode. So they were essentially explaining how even though he makes more money and he does like gets more views, he's more famous off of YouTube and Vine than he is on Disney, that he still loved. You could tell that he was personally hurt by Disney because he loved Disney for having that it kind of legitimizes him. It's the thing. It's the next level of for social media. It's getting that check mark, that blue check on Twitter is basically what it is. It's
Sure.
getting that
It's
cosign
not.
from the media that that this is not just
He's
Jake Paul, the
legit.
nobody, the
Yeah. Yeah.
like
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. This is like the
So
this
it's
is the actor
he
Jake Paul. This is
he.
the
It was
wrestler
it was it
Logan
was it was
Paul.
it was it was clout. It was bankability, respectability. It's like
It
it
was
wasn't
their
the biggest
version
payday.
after
Yeah, it
everything
wasn't the
they
biggest
went through.
payday, but it was like
The
what
fighting
made
they
him
fell
like
into,
legitimate or mainstream.
but
Well,
this
well,
it's all
well.
the same thing.
Before
They
before
were
the fight.
yeah, but
Yeah, yeah.
it was that before that. It was how he legitimized himself to like
He
yeah
got
exactly to like
he
say
got
that
into his
like
own little. I
yeah
read the Wikipedia. Basically, sorry. He
because
went to
when you
Wikipedia. He got
okay
into his own little like Justin Bieber thing where he like had some fight with his neighbors, or he was
oh
like
yeah it's
kind of
that
a like
familiar well
local,
several
yeah,
people
local
even Post
menace.
Malone he got in a fight with and
Well,
the
well, no, no,
H3
no.
guy
What I'm
but his
saying is,
neighbor too.
what I'm saying is like with Jake, the reason why he got fired was like he got like there were
I
like
thought
these
it was
news
the
reports of him being like a little bit of a rapscallion, let's say, a little bit of a nuisance,
you're right it
and
was for
then
that I thought it was the dead body
that went out on KTLA, the local news channel that like versus like other local news channels where just like random like whatever.
he was
KTLA is like the
harassing
local
his
news channel
neighbors
for he is the local well, yeah, it's the local news channel for Los Angeles, including Hollywood, so it's a bigger deal in that regard. So
yeah
the KTLA segment
definitely
went wide, and then Disney's like, pulling their collar, like I don't know about this, and so like, they fired him from his TV show, and that's why he ended up having to like follow his brother into like more like social media alternative startup. But anyway,
And so here's another side. I know we started talking about BuzzFeed and how we thought about AI writers is how we got into all of this shit in the first place. But really, I mean, would it does ultimately boil down to like the networks. They're harvesting free labor. BuzzFeed was my version of Disney Channel. HuffPuff's was my version of Disney Channel, but like they now are BuzzFeed. During that period of my life, to be fair, I've also worked for Jim Cramer from Mad Money and a bunch of other places to get that cosign to make sure even locally I've done journalism like in Phoenix and Arizona just to make sure that I had uh,
of all your
the street
credits,
creds within
you
certain places.
mentioning of all your credits, you mentioning that you worked for Jim Cramer is probably the most disreputable that I've heard so far.
Is it really?
Just saying.
So it was for he has the brand the
That's kind of a
Straight
joke, but
online.
also kind of not.
That's funny. No, the Kramer effect is hilarious. He was one of the first people that got me big. Like the HuffPost was kind of got me sort of up there, and the whole leak and everything. But HuffPost like during that was one of the places that like took me in while I was like unintentionally famous for that fucking summer. But the Kramer was one of the ones that like really blew up my Twitter because it kept. I was writing for Main Street, which was like the street is his like Investopedia brand version, and I think Investopedia is part of Red Ventures, which is fucking CNET. Is that I think they're part of the same. They might not be, but they they pay pretty well too. But I was writing about I was in the phase where I was writing about my own thing, kind of, and I ended up getting in a fight with Ross Erkin, is the guy that was my editor at the time, because I was trying to write about what I wanted versus what they were doing for their advertisers and things like that. That was my one of my first times where, because I was getting paid, I just they paid by check too. By the way, they mailed me a paper check, but to write for an online only news outlet for Jim Cramer. But yeah, that's when I started. That's when I got that the whole Little Wayne Eminem thing going through that whole phase through that, because I was going through like a anger of trying to figure out where I could what I could say where, and HuffPost, to their defense, was, even though it was free and I wasn't getting paid for it, I could say whatever I wanted. Versus like people that cared about their advertisers, they that there was a kind of a dividing line, and you have to kind of leverage. I mean, we've talked about this extensively. The difference between fame versus fortune, essentially, where you are more towards fame and I lean more towards fortune, and
Well, that
and neither one
to
of
be
us has
fair,
either.
also context. No, that's it's a fair characterization, but context is important there. Is people don't know this, but there's a pivot for me, right? Like there's a long time where I was more along your lines, or even to put it more to put it even more flatteringly and sympathetically, I wasn't quote unquote overly focused on either of those two things. I wasn't overly focused on fame. I wasn't overly focused on fortune. I was focused on doing the work, quote unquote, whatever that means. But I've since become a little bit more pragmatic, or might say cynical, and recognize that at the end of the day, like I was saying earlier, like about how I turned around the Kardashians, there's just a value, monetary and otherwise, to
There is.
fame and clout that if you leverage it correctly, it kind of solves your problems. And at that point, you can still do the work, you can still make the money, but at the end of the day, it insulates you not from responsibility, not from consequences, quite the opposite, but it insulates you, I think, from going broke automatically. Whereas it feels like trying to pursue money without clout is actually harder. It can be done for sure in a lot of different industries, but certainly in your industry, I imagine like in some ways you maybe have shot yourself. No offense, you shot yourself in the foot a little bit by like deliberately eschewing like notoriety or recognition, because like if people knew who Brian Penny was more, you would probably be more like a I don't know, a not Camille Foster, but like you'd be a name brand journalist. You'd have a higher
If I
paycheck,
had
right?
branded myself the way that people, and here's the funny thing is
You'd
that
be
I've
a
already,
Taylor
I
Lorenz.
have been at a lot of those places. Like it is not difficult for me. Even just this year, I've talked to people at Wired and places like that. I've been up in these upper echelons for Eddie Brill, basically, where like if you're inside the business, you know who I am. Especially BuzzFeed, I've got proof from their lawyer from the Cracked article that I wrote, where I started leveraging the free stuff, the free labor they were taking from me, and just said, "Fuck it, let's see." Like after I got tired of saying what I wanted to say, I was like, "All right, well, let's just see how much I can take this
Well,
for, what it's
sure,
worth." Saying like I'm a columnist for HuffPost, and
but there's a
I'm still in a room full of free shit from it.
difference, of course, between being like long-term security risk, Brian Penny, versus like, hey, we gotta pay this guy a fucking $1 million too much, but like $1,000 pay rate, Brian Penny. You know what I
There
mean?
are, and well, there definitely is a difference, and it's funny because that's the other part of why I had to like get rid of my Twitter, was because I had built that. You are the echo chamber that you build, and I built that being one of those troublemakers, being one of the activists. I was pushing on everything. The journalists, I was pushing on everything. I was pushing every button. I was very much like not afraid to speak my mind of what is going on, what I think, what is happening, say the things that people didn't want to say. And when that, I do enjoy that, and I expect that from people in my regular life. I am that way, but on LinkedIn, this is why I feel like my Facebook and my Instagram are both private. Like you can't even go on there unless you like send me a request. Like it's a gated community, and a lot of the stuff I do is on Discord, where it's not really searchable. I've always like known how to kind of unbrand myself in a way that like I was kind of remaining hidden. But I'm also at the point where I'm in my 40s and we're getting to the with the Eddie Brill situation, early 40s to be fair, but the Eddie Brill situation in
I
his
much.
50s and 60s where I have to eventually do build up these kind of things to build up the community because I've been able to skip over needing to be a social influencer, for example, but at the same time, I know Taylor Renz is a like a bad example of most journalists because for a lot of reasons, but because like the average journalist is not they got like 100 followers on Twitter that they have better things to do like unless they're out there to be a famous person for whatever reason they're purposely socially branding themselves. Journalism, like when you do it right, you stay in the background and you're focusing on the subject and the topic, but there's been so much blend between because of YouTube and the rise of all these things like breaking down the social norms and everything, brands still had money. They still had a lot of money, and they still wanted to advertise. So they still figured out how to do it. That's where I mean they went after the Kardashians first, the FCC for not just the Kardashians. They had a list of a bunch of brands, a bunch of influencers, but they're the ones who got the media headlines. Where they were not disclosing properly the things that they were selling, the sponsored relationships. That's the real
All right,
big
you didn't want the
difference
headache.
as much as it sucks, as much as the news is often skewed and things like that, like they are supposed to. That is what really separates like an investigative journalist kind of place versus like a fluffy news fucking thing. It's why when you talk about news, you always bring up like different journalists from Twitter that actually have their own followings and things like that go they job hop a lot. I mean, it's a bad fucking industry. And unless you're in
Yeah,
the
no,
Ryan's Guild,
I know.
it's
No,
a
I know.
cutthroat
I
fucking
was
thing.
I was gonna say you're like the Rethyon. That's
Oh yeah,
a
Pokemon.
Warcraft
Oh,
reference,
Warcraft. Oh my god, I said Pokemon. I was
but
thinking
like
Raytheon.
well, it's
No, I'm kidding.
technically it's Hearthstone, but you're like the catchphrase for you, like the catchphrase of that character would be I must remain hidden to remain free. That's kind of what you are. Whereas, like in
Nice.
my case, like I said, I often said, I don't really need to remain free per se. Like Luke Thomas said, I keep mentioning Thomas, but and Crowder, but he talked about like how if someone had given him, if offered him the $50 million deal for 4 years, he would have taken it, right? He didn't care if he would have had to like clean elephant dung, he would have taken it. Pretty much in the same boat, and like frankly, it's a lot of money for anybody, I think, except for like people who maybe have lost perspective. No offense to Crowder, it's a lot of money. But regardless of just the money factor, I've often said openly that while I don't want to compromise everything, I do have principles and I want to try and stick to them. I don't have to like modulate myself too much, I think, to be the kind of person who would be, if not attractive to a benefactor. That's also the problem is like, how do you attract a benefactor? How does that work? But I wouldn't necessarily, in my opinion, feel like I'd be losing that much from having to, for example, mind my P's and Q's in public, not be a sex pest, not, get demonetized or banned from various social platforms. Like all these things that I'm already doing in the sense, or not doing, in the sense of like, keeping my nose clean. It wouldn't be hard for me. But for someone, I think, who perhaps, and I don't want to be unfair to Crowder and others, who sees those things as extant liabilities, it might be significantly less appealing to have to like, oh, like I can't get kicked off of YouTube or kicked off of Twitter or demonetized or I lose the money. It's like, a writer being given in advance, but you have to make or actually better an artist. You have to an artist being a song like a musician or rapper getting given in advance. I don't know if you probably know about how those record
Oh yeah,
contracts work and
I
those
know
advances. Yeah,
people that have
yeah,
those that have
yeah, yeah,
that
yeah.
have
Being
burned
given in
through them and
advance,
wasted them and
being
have done
yeah,
so many
being given
stupid
in
things with them.
advance, but then you're on the hook for all this promotion and you have to get
Recording
X
studio
number amount of
features, just a feature at all
yeah,
you're
yeah, you
paying
have to
for.
yeah, you have to get a feature. You have to
Production.
do all this other, yeah, do all this other stuff. And oh, by the way, there's a clause where you can claw the money back if you don't do it. And oh, by the way, you don't get X amount, you don't get like any revenue from the actual sales until X amount are sold. And of course, Hollywood accounting, they'll never tell you that it's sold the appropriate amount for you to get residuals. But yeah, like all these things. It's like he didn't want a deal like that, and I get it, or he perceived the deal as being like that. But at my level, it's like if you told me that you're going to pay me, like not you, but if a person told me they're going to pay me like $1,000 a week, right? Like support local journalists, support Black creators. By the way, if whoever this when this goes out, like if they see my name or like
Oh, I put your
whatever,
name up
like
as soon as you said sex pest. Like 30 seconds later, like, oh, I gotta put his name
perfect, 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 perfect timing. But like please go to Edo Quinn on whatever platform. Don't bother with the Reddit links because I don't use Reddit anymore. But go to Twitter, go to my Ko-fi. Help support me as best you can. I appreciate I need the money, but like
your YouTube and Twitter are linked below in the description.
yeah, 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 yeah. I know, but I'm just saying like for me, right? Like at my level, I wouldn't mind the oversight. I wouldn't mind the quote unquote obligations that come with the money because, or the fame, because from my perspective, it's not, I don't see them as handcuffs, right? Talk about golden handcuffs. I don't see them as handcuffs, right? I see them as an ability to do the work that I'm already doing and reach, it's like a speech impediment, reach a wider audience
I'm gonna
and
reach a wider
like
audience.
exactly reach a wider audience and not starve. Like I think
Yeah,
I really try my best again to be good faith and to see other people's side, but it also just kind of frustrates me sometimes when I see people like do you remember Constance Wu? She was the
yes,
yeah, and she was like complaining. She said, "Oh, like fuck," when her TV show got renewed because she wanted to be like done with it already. And
yeah.
it's like I get it, I guess, but at the same time, like, really, you have to like you lose when you lose that level, when you lose respect to that degree, to where you can't like be grateful that you are on a hit program, wherever you think of that program, whatever other things you would want to be doing instead, quote unquote, like movies or whatever else, and you're like upset that you're at your own success, or you're resenting offers that you're being given that other people would kill for. I don't know. Again, like it'd be different if like I was at their level or I was in those rooms and whatever. But I just think sometimes that whatever calculus people make, it's make whatever calculus right for you, but don't um be so quick to assume that I guess to kind of put a button on this, people at all levels should try to have perspective and try to see things from the other side and remember that these things aren't always going to be one way. That's the biggest thing I would say to anybody is like remember that things aren't always going to be one way. You can't expect to be given a lot and not have to give something back. And I think sometimes what happens is again, like when you're Steven Crowder who wants a sugar daddy, when you're Constance Wu who is tied to her golden handcuffs, when you're a journalist who like uh, when you're a comedian who doesn't want to have a social media presence, or when you're a journalist who resents that the industry has become much more like um, clout based. That's all like reasonable, but at the same time, we exist in the world. The world is what it is. I exist in the world as it is. I can say that I want to be different. I can try to make it different in my own little way, but I exist in the world as it is, and I make those compromises because that's what it means to be a person. So that's kind of where I land on that. Sorry for the long monologue again.
Oh, you're all good. It's funny that fresh off the boat, like I edited on the Constance, I can't say her now, Constance Wu tone because when it started, it was Eddie Wong. When he first, I remember the pilot when it came out. I wanted maybe it was right after the pilot or the second episode. It wasn't that far, but he started just, or it might even be before. He was on Twitter all over it, basically saying like, "Oh, this sucks," blah 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 blah. Because once he sold it, he didn't really have control over like. It was no longer about his life. It was more about like what the ratings and the the committees within what was it NBC, ABC, wherever it was that
ABC.
yeah Yeah,
It felt like they had compromised the vision of his like,
yeah. But he still got the
semi
pay. It
autobiographical
didn't
sitcom.
it didn't
But
compromise
yeah,
the
yeah,
paycheck though, and that he still got
no,
credit
no,
for
yeah,
all that. And
exactly,
that's what everyone
exactly.
was kind of like. Okay, well, it's kind of hard for me to like to be mad about this because like yeah, sure, you're probably right, but like you got paid a lot of money to be complaining. Shut up. And yeah, so you were talking about that too. Sleepopolis. Are you familiar with Sleepopolis?
I'm not. If I could just parse one thing out before we get to that really quickly, I would say, and that this is going to sound biased, but I am a writer and whatnot. I have to say this. There's a difference between feeling like you're in golden handcuffs as an actor on a TV show versus a writer or a creator who puts something out there and feels like the way it got ultimately rendered to the public wasn't what you wanted. In both cases, you could say like you got paid, shut up, and I understand that, I'm sympathetic to that. But I think there's a different thing of like I only wanted to do this TV show for, let's say, 5 years, get a little famous, get my money, and get gone, as opposed to seven, where now suddenly it's interfering with my movie plans. Versus, I wanted to sell this show, and I was hoping that this, you know, Asian sitcom, ostensibly based on my life, would be more true to life. Versus, like, a sitcom that is marketable and bankable and mainstream and maybe compromises some of the vision in favor of like telling a story that quote unquote people are, if not that people want to see, telling a story that is more easily digestible and bankable in the public square. So I think there's a difference there. But anyway, what's Sleepopolis?
That's why I'm still paying attention to. Well, I'm newly paying attention to Vince McMahon and WWE for the last year, for very similar reasons to see how this man is having to watch what he built his entire life, that he's his entire career kind of get taken over by some
And his
corporate
dad, but yeah.
interest. So to bring this to Sleepopolis was a blog that basically in the early 2000s, mid 2000s to early 2010s, the guy he's in Phoenix. He built this blog Sleepopolis and became like the place for anybody to get their. It was the CNET of mattresses basically, or the Tom's Hardware guide of mattresses, and. It was the place where everybody wanted to read real reviews, and he, because of that, because he had he made a bunch of listicles of different mattresses. All of a sudden, he started off with his own mattress. He bought like a purple mattress, I believe it was, when they first came out, like when they were shipping mattresses to people. And as time goes on, he ends up holding the top SEO search results for purple. And Purple themselves decide, among all the other different startup mattress makers that were popping out at the time, and the traditional ones that were there with a bunch of money, they all wanted to give him money. They were all giving him free mattresses at first, and then he started selling mattresses. And this whole story was being told by the that I'm telling you was being told by in the Fast Company. It's actually published in Fast Company. Something about how Purple, the mattress, the war to sell you a mattress is an internet nightmare or something like that. And basically, what happens over the course of a few years is the Fast Company person. The reason he meets that reporter met the guy for Sleepopolis is because he needed a mattress, and he talked to a friend. He's like, "Oh, I have a friend. I can give you one." And then he goes to the guy's house, and he's like, just got mattresses everywhere. He's like, "What the? How did you do this?" And I did a similar to my cracked articles, a similar thing. I just didn't just do mattresses. I did everything. I did mattresses too, but I did everything I possibly could. And and so what he did, and the reason I did it the way I did is because I realized if taking $1 from a million people was easier than taking $1 million from one person. Long story short, this is all about decentralization and Bitcoin and all that kind of shit. But
It's also about going wide, which is another reason why I think it's important to try to achieve and leverage fame, assuming that you're actually doing something of like note and value. Like if you're just trying to be famous, that's a whole other thing. But like, yeah, it's a lot easier to make a pitch to 1 million followers. Hey, support Black creators. Pay me $1. Versus like again, trying to find that one big sugar daddy who's going to give you a payday.
and that's why I went that direction because I read this story. This was the tale of caution. Well, one of them. There was a lot of things that I kind of understood going into it, but what he did was he took like I don't know what it was. It was like 12 million something, give or take 20 million from Purple, and well, it started off small things. It was like a $2 million thing, I think it was something, give or take. But it started off as kind of a sponsor thing where he was able to do it like to what he wanted to do, but he didn't really read the contract that he was under, any of the stuff that was going on the legal terms of it, and inevitably they just kept pushing to get more and more and more and more and more, and because of that they were able to eventually sue and take control of Sleepopolis, Purple. And so Sleepopolis is still there. If you look up mattress reviews, like it's one of it. I don't know if it's still the top, but it's one of the top um, search results for mattress reviews or any type of mattress. If you put any kind of mattress in there, and it's owned by Purple. It's their. It's like their content marketing. Their Red Bull Extreme Sports Mountain Dew kind of thing. That's all it is. There's a lot of podcasts, a lot of things that are like that in different ways. It's what's the Mythic Quest? I'm sure you're familiar with it on Apple TV. They kind of explore that whole thing too of how the difference between the Pooty Shoot or whatever his name was, who was the homegrown organic audience choice version versus their plants when they tried to put the QA girl onto the TV and onto the streaming. I don't know. I sound so old. I am a boomer, you're right? But that whole dynamic is something that people can kind of sniff the difference between the audience, the corporate plant versus the guy who kind of came up from themselves, and yeah, it's interesting to see how he ended up losing. He got sued because he didn't want to basically say the things that they wanted to basically have him. If the problem started when he one of the other ones, Casper or whoever it was, they he rated one of their mattresses better than the Purple one, and then because they have it all over their marketing too, top rated pillow or mattress or whatever the fuck it was, and they because of that they had so much money on the line for it and their whole marketing campaign that it was too difficult to change. It was easier just to sue him. They ended up taking over the whole thing, and he ended up owing them like 100 million. I don't remember what it was, god awful amount that he had to pay them back for defaulting on the contract. And then yeah, now they own it. Now they still own it, and you can now, if you didn't know that, like you would just look at those reviews and think, oh yeah, Purple's the best everything. Like, but really, it's only because Purple, like, like sued that guy out of existence for not saying not being their puppet basically,
Yeah.
knowingly lying and breaking the law with it. Because clients will do that when you start taking that. That's the other part of this. I do have some like lucrative contracts. That's why I prefer to work with an agency because it kind of filters out some of that shit. But when you're working directly with the client, they will. I mean, you get them on TV, they want more. It's never enough. No one ever. It's an addiction for anybody who's famous that they just want that rush.
More, more, more.
Yeah,
How do
and
you like it?
and
How do you like it?
they don't give a fuck about journalistic integrity. They don't give a fuck about what it takes, what ethics are behind it. That's why I mean, brands were giving Kim Kardashian money. She didn't care. It's up to both the influencer and the brand. That's what the FCC kind of made clear is that like you can't expect like some starving artists. They're new money like a lottery winner, and you can't expect them to have like especially if you got famous on like TikTok or Instagram instead of being a journalist to have the integrity to understand that you can't take that money without disclosing that you took that money. And I mean that's the biggest thing I was trying to explain on the because the way Cracked when I wrote that article they write the headline and they said that they were fake reviews. Like no dude, they were real reviews. Everything I did was 100% legit and on the money. And like as long as you say hey they gave this to me to review, that's like yeah that's all you gotta do. You just let them know like this
Disclosure.
is free because they gave it to me.
Yeah.
That's it.
No, I
I
know.
didn't take any
I
money.
mean, no, no, yeah. I
And if
mean,
I did, I would have said I do make money off of things like YouTube ads.
yeah,
It's
yeah, yeah,
very
yeah.
clearly
Affiliate
obvious that
marketing.
it
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
blows. But that's why I
Yeah,
love
yeah.
YouTubers. That's circling back to that. That's why I prefer YouTubers over journalists. Is because if you're a journalist like on CNN, Mark Lamont Hill, I guess is still on one of those. If you, oh no, he's a
Oh
professor now.
man,
He's not. I don't think he is anymore. I'm so old now. I'm trying to think of which one of those HuffPost
he's
people is
no,
still
no,
up
no,
there.
no.
Is
He's
he?
a professor. He's a presenter. I'm pretty sure he has a show or a channel or something.
Yeah.
I would be shocked. Like you can just tell. Like this is again where I can sound a little bad faith or a little like uncharitable, but you can just tell like certain personality types. That is not that guy for whatever he is, whatever good work he has or has not done. That is not the kind of guy who can just quietly go off into a life of anonymity. I
Exactly.
would be, yeah, shocked if he does not still have something. I'll double
And
check.
also he's able to, because he has, like, when you're it's like a being a signed label artist versus an indie artist, or it's the same thing, getting fired from Disney, all those kind of things, the corporate, having the corporate sugar daddy versus having the nobody, and having just the people in the crowd, basically the fan driven kind of thing. And that's, he's able to, like, if you're uh, we'll say the Young Turks, even the Young Turks still have to operate like any other YouTube, but they don't have the luxury of being able to say, like, oh well, we don't, take any sponsors, blah 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 blah. Mark Lamont Hill could get on TV and legitimately say, like, look, I have nothing to do with advertising or marketing, and it's true because he's working on these outlets that do all that for him. There's a department that he doesn't have to see. It's not that his outlet is not involved in it, but he is being. It's kind of like a backwards lie when you think about it. Like, the journalists themselves can say that, like, oh, I don't get involved in that, but the outlet that you're writing for does, so you do get involved. Like, you may not be the person who does that, but you're still part of that same corporation. But they have, it's accountable deniability, basically. They have that, the influencer that were the ones that were starting up, that started on anywhere, TikTok, Twitter, YouTube, regardless of where it was at, they did not have the same understanding of, like, how to separate those. Sometimes they were just, one or two people, and they had to do it all themselves. They had to do all of it, and there was no the same line, and they had to draw different lines. They had to be drawn forward, a lot of them, but yeah, it gets crazy complicated as you get into each one of these things of, like, how the pay works and how you can actually make money, and how the different. I mean, what it boils down to is, up to this point, I've relied on that corporate system because I always knew how to reach the right people and talk to the. I'm the Eddie Brill. I know how to get under the Tonight Show kind of guy, but, like, I don't have, like, the big social following except for what I'm building now. And, like, I've been spending a year building that on LinkedIn just because I realized I needed to have something. Otherwise, I've hit the wall. I'm testing it out right now. I'm going to talk about it on this channel once this summer when I have more data. But I started a secondary Adobe account to see if I can. I feel like I hit a ceiling unless I get promoted by Adobe. I can't make any more money off that account than I already do. So I created an extra account to see if I can get that to the same ceiling, and then just see the same thing spread wide. I already spread off Adobe too, but, like, I'm just trying different ways this last week when I had chance to really dig into back into my stock stuff that we were doing back in November, October, especially October. I've started figuring out ways to kind of diversify it across those things. I'm going to test those things out to see whether. That's what I love about AI, is that I could get. We can't make a billion videos. It's just not possible. We have to sit here and take time to do all this stuff. But, like, with those images, it's so easy to beat out the quality that a photographer, and the variety that a photographer and a designer can do, just at the speed of you could go do that. But it's for certain very niche use cases. But getting the
No, I got
data
you. Yeah,
to be
yeah.
able to, like, look at it and see the trends of really what I like to see, to find out, like, the difference between, like, because that's a meritocracy for the most part. It's a controlled one because Adobe can manually do, God mode. But at the same time, it's not me that's selling those images. It's those images that are selling themselves. I'm just taking the money, versus YouTube, where it's a little bit of a mix of both. But, like, yeah, it's just different ways of what how you market your creation depends on where you're selling it at the end of the day, I guess. To wrap that up.
Right. So he is just going back to Mark Lamont Hill. He is currently the host of Upfront on Al Jazeera English, and
Oh,
has been,
nice.
yeah, and has been since I think 2020 or 2021 when he replaced Mahdi Hassan. So
That makes
that
sense,
is
because that's about when I stopped paying attention to the news cycles as hard, was when COVID came through,
sure.
and I was like, no, I'm done. I'm gonna watch some Netflix.
Yeah, there you go. Okay, so I don't know. We've been going for a while, man.
Yeah, I'm good with kind
So
of this. We're at three. We're over 3 hours we've been on this thing, and I've
yeah,
got the
yeah, yeah,
recording. I
yeah.
can we can run an outro real quick, and then hold on. Let me run this outro video or little thing on here. So click to subscribe. I'm gonna get the bell. I know I'm gonna get this stupid bell
Yes,
done.
yes.
I'll add
Bell for
that later on.
notifications.
Canva, by the way, for anyone who's interested in a lot of tools that we use for all this stuff, I'm gonna be doing separately whenever throughout the week. Now that I have this all set up, I'm gonna try to like jump on here and do like quick 15-minute things on like specific like here's how to use Midjourney and like here's how to use this and Chat GPT, all those kind of things to fill it up with like videos of that. But every week or so, we'll be back here with like another long form podcast like this.
Also, as they say in social audio, follow the hosts. I mean, to go without saying, but I am Quinn Q. I am a storyteller, I think is how I'm describing myself these days, and writer, primarily on Twitter and burgeoning on other platforms. Always available to engage with people and to try to help make sense of this senseless world, as well as maybe pivot a little bit into fiction. Ironically, the idea originally was always for me to like be a fiction writer, but I didn't really materialize, and now I have this like nebulous like again, not pontificator, but like musing slash sense making slash almost to journalist, but not really lane that I've carved out for myself. But I got some pretty good content on my Twitter profile, and I would say that I'm always trying to be reasonable, if nothing else, and informative. So yeah, check it out. Edo Quinn, EDOKWIN on all social media except for Reddit because they
Yeah,
suck.
and it's been popping up on. I've been popping up on the screen throughout this whole thing. So for the last 3 hours, every I don't know, somewhere between 20 minutes and 30 minutes, give or take. I haven't really been timing it. I would pop up the stuff on here, and also in the description down below, there's a bunch of links to my AI portfolios, his Quinn's things, his Twitter and YouTube are what I have down there right now. What was the other one you said? You said something else instead of YouTube last time.
um, that really those really are the two main ones. Like back when I was using the R place, that was like my number one or close to it. Combing with Twitter, I'd say Twitter is probably the go-to. I mean, Ko-fi. So I mean,
Ko-Fi, that
like
was the
if
one.
if you want to support me, if you want to actually like help make sure that I don't go any broker than I already am, help support Black creators, help support help support independent, let's say independent thought, for lack of a better way to put it, journalism, writing, where you want to put it, independent thought. You can go to Ko-fi, that's ko-fi.com/edoquinn and donate. Any amount, if you're choosing, it's defaulted to $10. I prefer more, frankly, but whatever you can afford, I appreciate it because it's hard out here.
What is Ko-Fi? I've not actually used that. Is that similar to? I was going to say OnlyFans almost for a minute. What Patreon? Is that similar to
Hey man,
Patreon?
hey man, it's been pitched to me before. Like, if I was pretty, I would do it in a heartbeat. We've also talked in the back channel about that one. But no, it's not an OnlyFans, but it is in the sense that OnlyFans is part of the larger, I would say, donation funding,
Pa-
alternative.
Patreon is what I was actually meaning when I.
Yeah, no, you're thinking of
To be
Patreon. I know
fair.
you're thinking of Patreon. Yeah, the alternative like funding stream ecosystem. That is what it's a part of. So like it is like a Patreon, but it is much more bare bones. I actually have accounts. I mean, I told you I have accounts. I do like I have friends who are like actual like the proper term is sex workers, but that has connotations. So I'll just say models. I have
Creators.
friends who are yeah, creators and models of various
Explicit content.
categories, and I as well as I just follow some of them professionally for insight, and like I have an account on every single platform that I can of those sorts that do not require me to subscribe or pay up front, and as a creator, keyword. Like I have a creator account, not a fan account, a creator account on these platforms. And I don't like really have a preference. If you want to go to my Patreon, I have one too. If you want to go to my throne.me account and buy me a gift, I have one of those. Uh,
You have an Amazon wish
I
list.
I actually don't have one Amazon wishlist yet, but I will probably make one if this actually like if again if this whole thing with us pops off and I get like the magic number right now is like hit 1,000 and then after that hit 10K. If I can like magically get 1,000 followers and then like I'm pretty close right now. I'm at 700, actually 8 plus. If I can get 1,000 and then go from that to 10K, because 10K is like where Twitter will allow you to monetize your account. Um, that would be insane. And at that point, like, yeah, I'll make an Amazon list. I'll make everything. Throne basically is an Amazon list list, but it's their own like website. There's also one that's called Fan House. Like again, like there's all these different like places. Like there's obviously Patreon, there's obviously Stripe, there's obviously a number of things. I make it very easy to pay me because I need the money. But my main thing is just encouraging people to support the kind of like we talked about the other thing in the back channel was like you mentioned HBO Max. I also was like you guys are asking for his password. It's like the one that's the one that's the one streaming service I usually I have a policy of paying for my content. I've told you that, and I don't like to like not pay for content or like leech off of other people's passwords and whatnot. But like all these places are costing like $15 a month, and HBO Max is like the one that I was. It's like HBO Max and Netflix that are the ones that I was really tempted about re-upping on. Just like I'm holding on. I literally like don't. I barely have anything in my bank account. But like what I encourage people to do is to remember that even though like you and I both came up with the internet like back in the 2020s and whatnot, like all this stuff is free. Like the idea of paying for news, for example, like as a reader subscriber paying for news is ridiculous because it's like it's all free. What are you talking about? But like it actually isn't. Like the New York Times costs money. They have a paid staff. They have operating expenses. They have
I
like
pay for
hosting fees.
newsletters and things. I've got a bunch of paid newsletters.
Yeah, exactly. No, exactly. So what I encourage people to keep in mind, if I can leave anyone with this, thinking about the creator economy and AI and all of it, if you would like a higher quality, better class of criminal, a higher quality of content than just an AI generated BuzzFeed listicle, remember that there's a real person who's making that higher quality of content, and you should consider subscribing, donating, doing whatever little bit you can, whether it's $1 here, $10 there, $100 there. You should consider paying for the content that you consume because we are all adults here, by and large. Not, I said like it's one thing when you're a kid and the internet is free, you don't have money. We're all adults here. We have money, we have jobs, and these things do cost. Like to create these things that you consume, to have these thoughts, to do this work, like you said, to spend like 2 weeks on uh, journalism, an journalistic article takes time, takes energy, takes footwork. So please, my pitch to all of your lovely listeners, all of our lovely listeners would be consider supporting the content that you consume because that is how you'll make sure that it does not fade away. Democracy. What was it? The New York Times says democracy dies in darkness. Like that's kind of overstated and hyperbolic. But the real is like quality content dies in poverty. So don't let us die in poverty. Just saying.
Yeah, so what he's saying basically is send some money. We are, yeah, we'll happily take it through all of our channels. Um, yeah, so that's pretty much what we got for the first episode. This is Brian, Penny, and Quinn. We're signing off. Going to